Chapter 2222 2222 2222 Formation to God Lord Level. The formation is built according to the universe's natural laws. The formation is divided into several stages. I'll only tell you about the stages I've come into contact with. The first stage is to simulate the laws. This is for God level warriors, simulating the laws of heaven and earth, connecting heaven and earth. The second stage is to establish the laws. This is for eternal God Lord level warriors, establishing the laws of heaven and earth, controlling heaven and earth. The third stage is the combination of laws. This is for the undying God King level warriors. The combination of laws can change heaven and earth. The fourth stage is the stage I've touched before, the fusion of laws. The power will increase by 10 times. Within the dragon field, Tianqing God Emperor introduced to the 4,000 members of the Dragon Palace and Fire Hammer clan. The training of arrays, the higher one goes, the harder it is. However, array masters have the ability to fight above their level. It's normal to fight above their level. Back then I was able to fight above 2 levels. It is said that the legendary shaman realm is able to surpass 3 to 4 levels. The god of formation looked at Wang Xian. Yes. Wang Xian nodded his head. He had some understanding of this. However, to reach the shaman realm, the difficulty was at least 10 to 100 times more difficult than cultivating to the 9th transformation of the divine dragon realm. Among the top races in the universe, they relied on their bloodline and physique. However, the likes of the Magi relied on the world treasures, comprehension, and luck. There were very few records of the Magi in the divine dragon inheritance. It seemed like there were only 12 Magi who were comparable to the ancient god-feeding Kun Master. Of course, the Magi did indeed have the strength to fight against the divine dragon. Little friend, I'll first teach you the simulation laws. In the cultivation of array masters, if you want to go far, most of them only cultivate spiritual chi and not attributes. Once you cultivate the attributes, you can only set up an array of one attribute. When you cultivate spiritual energy, you can use it to trigger other attributes. The good thing is that you can set up any attribute array. The bad thing is that your attack power is weak and you have to rely on the array. An array master had a special way of cultivation. Such a way of cultivation was not found in the boundless galaxy. This was also the first time Wang Xian heard of it. Instead of cultivating attributes, one would only absorb spiritual energy and use it to trigger the 9 attributes of heaven and earth. The disadvantage was, as the celestial emperor of heaven's formation had said, one's attack power was extremely weak. One might not even be a match for a peak stage demigod even if one ignited the divine fire. It was just that exaggerated. Of course, if one were to use formations, formation masters could fight against opponents of a higher level. There is also a huge advantage to elemental formation masters. That is, their cultivation speed is fast. The speed of their comprehension of the simulated laws is 10 times faster than that of non-elemental formation masters, or even more. My friend, you have 7 attributes. You are a natural-born array master. The lack of wind and lightning is not a big deal. I have quite a number of 5 elemental array formations here. If you cultivate them, you will definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Tian Jingzi stared at Wang Xian with a slight sigh. This was also the main reason why he wanted to take Wang Xian in as his disciple when he found out that Wang Xian possessed the 5 elemental attributes. If one person controlled the 5 elements, it would be fine even if he didn't want a ray of light and dark wind and lightning from the array formation. With the 5 elements, if he had a heaven and earth formation, he might be able to step into the shaman realm. Wang Xian smiled faintly. The art of formations is vast. I have only grasped the basics of it even after tens of millions of years. You should be looking for someone now. It's not difficult to find someone. Do you know about the mirage? As long as you have the item on the other party, you can set up the law of the mirage. This is a simulation of a water attribute law. If you can set up this formation, you will be able to investigate the past of this area. The god of formation continued his introduction. Impressive, Mirage. Investigate an area. Wang Xian's eyes were filled with astonishment. Such a method was indeed extremely powerful. Next, I will teach my young friend how to simulate the law. Supporting formations are easier than battle formations. In the next few months, Wang Xian began to learn array formations from the heaven array formation. Array formations were used to simulate the rules of the universe. Once one grasped some of the rules, one could directly set up an array formation for battle. Using spiritual energy to guide various attributes to attack, the more arrays one could control, the stronger one's combat strength would be. As an existence at the level of Void God Emperor, the Heaven Array could control more than 10,000 arrays. As a powerful array master, he had to learn how to explore arrays from the laws of the universe. Arrays could mimic diseases and could directly curse people. By simulating natural disasters, one could directly set up another natural disaster. Of course, the power of all this was related to the strength and consumption of the array master. The words "don't provoke the array master" mentioned by the Heaven Array God Emperor in the Resplendent Land had another point besides their scouting ability. If that formation master used all his energy, and even his life to curse, even if he was 2 levels higher than this formation master, he would still be in great danger. Ding! Congratulations to host for comprehending the mirage of the water elemental formation. Ding! Congratulations to host for comprehending the darkness elemental formation. Your bloodline is connected. Ding! Congratulations to host for comprehending the sea of flames. Ding! Congratulations to host for comprehending the holy robe of flames. Following that, the system notifications kept coming in. One by one, the 5 elements and light and darkness formations were under Wang Xian's control. Due to the fact that he possessed the 5 elements origin and light and darkness, coupled with the fact that he already possessed the combat strength of a god who had comprehended the power of 2 laws, the speed of his control was extremely fast. In just a short year, he had completely mastered the first stage of the formation simulation formation. However, battle-type formations were of little value to Wang Xian. In fact, they were of no use to him. That was because he could use the energy in his body to simulate the formation directly. The formation master could also set up the formation in advance in the formation compass. He could use it directly during battle. This was much faster than setting up a formation at the last minute. If he set up a sufficient number of formation compasses, he could easily kill those who were a level higher than him. Simulated Water Attribute Law, Mirage. Established Water Attribute Law, Void Memory. 1 month after a year, Wang Xian stood in the dragon field. A virtual image of the entire dragon palace appeared in the sky. Following that, the vast energy in his body entered the mirage. The entire scene in the mirage began to move slowly. His heart skipped a beat. He injected energy again and the scene in the mirage began to move rapidly. This moving scene was the past. Check the past. This was the first law that Wang Xian was able to establish. The establishment of the law belonged to the second stage of the Formation Master, which corresponded to the level of the Eternal Lord. In addition, it could be said that he had already become an Eternal Lord level Formation Master. Buzz. 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 In an instant, Wang Xian felt that his control over the water attribute had increased by a few hundred times. The speed of his cultivation had also increased by a few hundred times. Huh! Wang Xian was stunned for a moment. His eyes were sparkling. The cultivation of an array master is to simulate the laws. To establish the laws, establishing the laws requires a vast amount of energy. Although I have only ignited 6 wisps of divine fire, due to the conversion of 7 types of elemental energy, I have been able to achieve the level of an eternal God Lord. Although it is just a supporting law, it is still the level of an eternal God Lord. Without the eternal kingdom, Wang Xian was able to advance to the realm of the eternal God Lord, which was the realm of an array master. It could be said that Wang Xian was the only one of his kind. The breakthrough of an array master also improved his control over the water attribute. It also improved his cultivation speed. A hint of a smile appeared in Wang Xian's eyes. In the future, As long as he cultivated in seclusion for 10 years, he would be able to level up even without using any resources. But now, some people are going to die. Very soon, a hint of cold killing intent flashed in Wang Xian's eyes. Chapter 22-23 22-23 2223 Dragon King of the Dragon Palace came to teach Wang Xian a lesson. The main reason why Wang Xian practiced formations was to lock onto the position of the Thunder God Lord. After more than a year, he had achieved some success in the art of formations. It was time for him to claim his life from the Thunder God Lord. Formation, black hole! Wang Xian stepped out of the Dragon Palace and pointed his arm into the void in front of him. Streams of energy were injected into the space in front of him. The formation of the black hole was due to the energy. Setting up a black hole formation could be done with any attribute, even if there was no attribute to rely on the spiritual energy. 10 seconds later, a black hole appeared in front of Wang Xian. In order to test it out, he did not use the formation inside the Dragon Palace to travel. Buzz. Wang Xian disappeared the moment he stepped in. The black hole set up by the formation was slightly different from the instantaneous movement of the strong ones. The instantaneous movement of the experts required them to sense the position in the distance and move after positioning themselves. As for the black hole, it was heading in a certain direction. The distance of the teleportation was determined by the energy injected into it. This was not fixed and it had to be in a straight line. However, the advantage was that the distance of the black hole was more than 10 times or even dozens of times greater than the instantaneous teleportation of the experts. Buzz. When Wang Xian appeared, he had already entered the vast void. He took a look at the starry sky map and continued to construct the formation. 10 seconds later, a black hole appeared in front of him. Wang Xian disappeared again. The Dragon Palace was located in the middle of the boundless sea. It was not too far away from the center of the northern region where the eternal thunderbolts used to be. After more than 10 consecutive black hole teleportation, Wang Xian only used a few minutes to arrive at the void where the Lord of the Thunderbolts had placed the Eternal Kingdom. This speed is really fast. Even the Lord of Eternal God who has comprehended a law is not as fast as this speed. Wang Xian floated in the void and was slightly surprised. His eyes were sparkling as he looked at the thunderclap planet in front of him. The current northern region was completely dominated by the Dragon Palace. I have to confirm one thing first. Wang Xian turned his gaze around and a faint mist was emitted from his body. Buzz. He waved his arm rapidly. A black and white pattern slowly appeared in the sky. The pattern was the epitome of this space. Formation mirage! Wang Xian spat it out gently. Following that, the mirage rapidly solidified. Formation void memory! Using the formation mirage as the foundation, he established the laws and laid down the void memory formation. Wang Xian's heart stirred as he injected energy into the picture in front of him. The picture in the picture started to revolve and started to reverse. Buzz, buzz, buzz. With the continuous injection of energy, the picture started to reverse at an even faster speed. Soon, an eternal kingdom appeared in the picture. That was a year ago. Wang Xian's heart skipped a beat as he stared at it intently. From the departure of the eternal kingdom to its gradual return. At this moment, the scene from more than a year ago was displayed on the screen. Buzz. All of a sudden, Wang Xian pointed his finger at the void, and the scene was locked. He frowned slightly as he stared at the earthy yellow stone. He pointed his finger, and the scene continued to rewind. Buzz. He waved his arm towards the sky and a figure appeared in the void above. There were 7 rocks floating above the vast figure. Wang Xian narrowed his eyes slightly and was filled with coldness. The scene continued to rewind and the entire void was calm. So the one who tipped off the others was the 7-star Divine Lord of the Eternal 7 Stars. A hint of killing intent flashed in Wang Xian's eyes. With a move of his hand, a drop of blood appeared in his hand. This drop of blood came from the descendant of the Thunder God Lord. Formation blood connection! Wan Xian continued to set up formation after formation in the void, and placed this drop of blood in the center. Wan Xian waved the mirage and landed directly in the formation with blood connection. Formation mirror image! He shouted softly, and the two formations reflected each other. An image of the eternal kingdom appeared. Found it! Wan Xian sensed the information transmitted from his bloodline connection. Looking at the mirror image, a cold expression appeared on his face. You hid so far away! Wan Xian sensed the location where the Thunder God Lord was hiding. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I'll deal with you after I get rid of the 7 stars first. He mumbled as he looked at the Thunder Star in front of him and flew straight into the ocean. After entering the Dragon Palace of the ocean, Wan Xian was teleported directly into the Dragon Palace of the Boundless Galaxy through the formation. Prime Minister Gui, inform Eternal Wind Expanse and the Eternal 7 Stars of the Southern Region immediately. Tomorrow, our Dragon Palace will pay a visit. Wan Xian returned to the Dragon Palace and spoke to Prime Minister Gui immediately. Oh? Dragon King, pay a visit to the Eternal Wind Expanse and the Eternal 7 Stars? Prime Minister Gui was a little puzzled. With the current strength of our Dragon Palace, it's time for us to occupy the entire ocean of the Boundless Galaxy. Wan Xian said to him calmly. It's the Dragon King! Prime Minister Gui immediately nodded his head and replied. Currently, the Southern Region, the Eternal 7 Stars, and the Eternal Divine Leaves did not occupy the entire Boundless Galaxy. It was time to occupy the entire ocean of the Boundless Galaxy. Let's visit the Eternal Wind Field first, then the 7 Eternal Stars. Wan Xian mumbled. What? The Dragon King is going to visit our Eternal Wind Field tomorrow? Very soon, on the main planet of the Eternal Wind Field in the Southern Region, a group of peak-stage Immortal Realm experts of the Eternal Wind Field gathered together. When they received the news, their faces were filled with shock. The Dragon King is coming to visit us personally? Could it be because of the matter of the Thunder God Lord? We did not help them find the Thunder God Lord. An old man frowned slightly, his face full of solemnity. They had witnessed the strength of the Dragon Palace. After all, a God Lord had fallen in the hands of the Dragon Palace, so they had to be careful. He came with ill intentions, but he told us in advance that he would come to visit us, so he probably won't come to cause trouble on purpose. An old man guessed. The Lord God Lord has found out about this, so he asked us to be ready. Since the Dragon King has come, we will warmly welcome him. An old man in the center stood up and immediately said, Yes. A group of peak-stage Godly Realm experts nodded solemnly. 7 Stars, tomorrow the Dragon King will come to visit Eternal Wind Expanse first. You should come too. At the same time, in the void next to Eternal Wind Expanse main planet, an incomparably huge tornado was rotating, exuding an incomparably terrifying aura. In a palace located in the middle of the tornado, God Lord Huan Yu looked at the shadow in the mirror and said indifferently, Okay, Huan Yu, I've said that we should unite. Otherwise, it won't be difficult for the Dragon Palace to break us one by one. In the mirror, 7-star God Lord said with a cold face. Okay, when the Dragon King visits tomorrow, it's time for us to announce our alliance. God Lord Feng Huan hesitated for a moment, and said indifferently. The Dragon Palace's destruction of a God Lord made them feel jittery. A year ago, the 7-star God Lord had come to him to announce their alliance. But he didn't agree at that time. Now, it seemed like it was time for them to join forces. Their alliance could also make the Dragon Palace worry a little. The two of them joined forces. They believed that even if the other party had 4 God Lords, they could still escape if they couldn't defeat them. Chapter 22-24 22-24 The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace came to give advice. Did you hear? The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace is going to visit the Eternal Wind Universe and the Eternal 7 Stars. What is the Dragon King going to do? Is it because of the Thunder God Lord? The Eternal Wind Universe and the Eternal 7 Stars didn't pay attention to the orders of the Dragon Palace. The news that the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace was going to visit the Eternal Wind Universe and the Eternal Seven Stars soon spread throughout the boundless star field. The big forces in the endless star field paid close attention to the Dragon Palace's current actions. As the strongest force, the Dragon Palace had once killed a God Lord. Any action of the Dragon Palace would attract the attention of all the forces. The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace was going to visit the Eternal Wind Expanse Cosmos and the Eternal Seven Stars, which made many people extremely curious. One day passed very quickly. Roar! 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 In the early morning of the next day, roars resounded throughout the ocean in the boundless sea. The boundless sea was an ocean in the void, and the entire ocean was suspended in the void. The depth of the ocean was millions of meters deep. The entire ocean was extremely vast, and the area of the ocean was comparable to hundreds of Earths. There were many aquatic creatures living in the boundless ocean, and it was now the headquarters of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace was located in the middle of the vast sea, suppressing an area. Today, in the sky above the sea, 9 extremely terrifying wind divine dragons were pulling a throne and roaring into the sky. The 9 wind divine dragons each emitted an aura that was not weaker than the 9 wisps of divine fire. Let's go! Wan Xian sat on the dragon throne while Prime Minister Gui and the rest stood at the side. Behind him, Ao He, the dark blazing demonic dragon, and Ao Xingmu were accompanying him. At the back, there were 20 experts at the peak of the godly state of the Dragon Palace, and 2,500 dragon guards. Roar! The wind god dragon roared again, and a strong hurricane engulfed everyone. Boom! The 9 wind god dragons brought Wang Xian and the rest towards the direction of the southern region at a terrifying speed. Their speed was even comparable to experts at the peak of the godly state. Wan Xian did not bring too many members of the Dragon Palace, but this was enough. Ha ha ha, 7-star Lord, please! However, at this moment, on the main planet of Eternal Wind Expanse, an incomparably grand banquet venue was already filled with people. In the middle of the venue, God Lord Wind Expanse, who was dressed in green clothes, smiled and said to the figure in front of him, "Ha ha!" 7-star God Lord laughed. The two of them sat in the center and began to chat with each other. Today, Eternal Windward announces that we will form an alliance with the Eternal 7 Stars. We will advance and retreat together. Not long after, God Lord Windward stood up and announced loudly. His voice resounded throughout the entire planet. We, the Eternal 7 Stars, form an alliance with Eternal Windward. We will advance and retreat together. The 7 Stars Master also stood up and announced loudly. In the center of the huge square, the disciples of the Eternal 7 Stars and Eternal Wind World watched this scene with sparkling eyes. Today, the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace would come to visit. At this time, they had formed an alliance with the Eternal 7 Stars, and all the disciples could think of the reason. They were afraid that the Dragon Palace would threaten them or order them. The alliance between the two forces was to resist the Dragon Palace. The Eternal 7 Stars are here, and they chose to join forces with the Eternal Wind Universe at this moment. It's obvious that they are here to resist the Dragon Palace. The 3 God Lords of the Dragon Palace joined forces with the East Divine Leaf God Lord to kill the Double Fox God Lord. Now that the 7 Stars God Lord and the Wind Universe God Lord have joined forces, it's still not as good as the Dragon Palace, but it's impossible to destroy them. The 7-star God Lord and Wind Expanse God Lord can also resist the Dragon Palace. After all, if the Dragon Palace really does something, they can contact the Thunder God Lord who is still on the run. The Thunder God Lord will definitely agree when he gets the news. When that time comes, the 3 God Lords will be able to fight the Dragon Palace together. On the planet, some people were filled with shock when they heard the 2 God Lords' announcement. Some of the forces that came to inquire about the news had their eyes twinkling. Roar, roar, roar! At this moment, a vast roar came from the void. Everyone was slightly shocked and quickly looked towards the sky. Hiss, the Dragon King and the others are here. Look, those 9 terrifying creatures, what a powerful force! 9 divine beasts that are comparable to 9 wisps of divine fire God pulling a dragon throne. The Dragon King is so powerful. In the boundless galaxy, most of the people had never seen the Dragon King, nor had they seen the disciples of the Dragon Palace. When they saw the group of members of the Dragon Palace flying over from afar, everyone's expression changed slightly. They were all staring at him closely. Welcome, Dragon King, to the eternal expanse of wind. When the Star Banquet Square came out, the 7-star master heard the roar and looked into the void. He swept his gaze behind Wang Xian and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the Mountain Master and the Dongfang Divine Leaf Master did not follow them. Since the 2 masters did not follow them, there was nothing for them to be afraid of. Hee, welcome Dragon King. What a coincidence. A few days ago, Feng Huan and I agreed to meet up today. I didn't expect you to come too, Dragon King. I heard that the Dragon King is going to our eternal 7 stars as well. It just so happens that we are going together this time. The 7 stars Lord also stood up and laughed loudly. He cupped his hands toward Wang Xian who was in the void. Haha, the 7 stars Lord is here. That's great. Wang Xian looked over. His eyes were sparkling. Roar! Roar! The 9 divine wind dragons landed on the empty space in the middle. Wang Xian flew down from above. Please take a seat, Dragon King. May I know why you have come all the way here? God Lord Feng Huan looked at Wang Xian and asked with a smile on his face. It's nothing major. The main reason for my visit is that I need Eternal Wind Huan's approval on one matter. Wang Xian stood in the middle of the square and did not take a step forward. Instead, he stood there and spoke quietly. When the god of wind expanse saw Wang Xian in such a state, his pupils contracted slightly. The expressions of the surrounding experts and disciples of the eternal wind expanse and the eternal 7 stars changed slightly as they looked at Wang Xian in unison. May I know what is the matter, Dragon King? The god of wind expanse frowned slightly as he asked. I want the oceans of all the life planets in the southern region. The Dragon Palace will control the oceans of all the life planets. Wang Xian spoke slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, God Lord Wind Expanse's expression turned ugly instantly. The oceans of the life planets? The oceans of every life planet would take up 2/3, 1/2, or at least 1/3 of the entire planet. Now Wang Xian was asking for all the oceans. It was equivalent to asking for more than half of the territories of the southern region. Dragon King, aren't you asking for too much of the oceans of all the life planets? How can Eternal Wind World agree to such conditions? I know that your Dragon Palace is more powerful, but you can't bully people like this. God Lord Wind World's face was solemn as he growled at Wang Xian. If that's the case, God Lord Wind World, I, the Dragon King, will experience your strength. Wang Xian smiled faintly and walked forward slowly with his eyes locked onto him. Chapter 22-25 22-25 The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace came to teach him a lesson. Upon hearing Wang Xian's words and seeing him take a few steps forward, God Lord Feng Huan and everyone around him stared at Wang Xian in astonishment. Even the 7 stars God Lord frowned slightly as his eyes sparkled. Let's see the strength of our God Lord Feng Huan. Hasn't the Dragon King not reached the level of a God Lord yet? The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace doesn't seem to be at the level of a God Lord yet. Is he challenging the Lord Feng Huan now? Some of the experts stared at Wang Xian and whispered. Dragon King, are you joking? Are you trying to see my strength? The Lord Feng Huan sized up Wang Xian from head to toe. He was certain that the Dragon King had yet to become the eternal God Lord. Dragon King, aren't you going a little overboard to want the oceans of all the life planets? I'm sure you know the size of the oceans on every planet. Eternal Wind and Eternal 7 Stars have never provoked you before. Don't go too far. At the side, the 7 Stars Lord said to Wang Xian with a cold expression. The Dragon Palace was indeed very strong. They were no match for them, but they were not afraid either. If they were really forced into a corner, the entire Dragon Palace would have to pay a terrible price. Cut the crap and attack! Wang Xian stared at the 7 Stars Lord and said calmly. Haha, alright. Dragon King, I, Feng Huan, would like to see the strength of your Dragon King. If you can defeat me, I, Feng Huan, will give all the oceans to your Dragon Palace. When the Feng Huan Lord heard Wang Xian's somewhat contemptuous words, a hint of anger flashed across his eyes. If the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace also possessed the combat strength of a lord, then the entire Dragon Palace would be able to mobilize 5 lords. With 5 god-level masters, even if he joined forces with the Eternal 7 Stars, he would not be able to defend against the Dragon Palace. Let's go! God Lord Feng Huan's eyes were filled with a cold glint. He moved his body and flew straight into the void. Buzz! Wang Xian moved his body and flew over instantly. His body was surrounded by the yin and yang poles. Take this, Wang Xian said indifferently. His entire arm instantly turned into a dragon claw. The energy of the 5 elements was contained within it as it attacked God Lord Feng Huan. This power! Sensing Wang Xian's attack, God Lord Feng Huan's expression sank. This power was definitely at the level of a God Lord. Damn it, this is troublesome. His expression changed slightly. We can't lose or else. A terrifying tornado instantly condensed around him. With him as the center, the tornado instantly swept towards Wang Xian. Rip! Wang Xian waved his gigantic dragon claws and tore at the terrifying tornado. The grayish destructive energy of the 5 elements instantly tore a hole in the tornado. What? God Lord Feng Huan's expression changed. This? The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace also has the strength of a God Lord. When the 7 Stars God Lord saw this scene, his expression changed drastically. A hint of fear could be seen in his eyes. Not good, that Dragon King also has the strength of a Master God. Oh my God, the Dragon King is also a Master God, and there are 4 in the Dragon Palace alone, and with the Divine Leaf Master's words. At this moment, all the experts of Eternal Wind Expanse and the 7-Star Eternal changed their faces. The Dragon Palace was becoming more and more terrifying. The Dragon King of the Dragon Palace is fighting with our Master God. The Dragon King is fighting with God Lord Feng Huan. What? What happened? On the entire planet, everyone's expression changed drastically when they saw the sudden rumbling sound coming from the void. The Dragon King was fighting with God Lord Feng Huan. The Dragon King also possessed the strength of a God Lord? Then, everyone raised their heads in shock and looked in awe. Boom! At this moment, Wang Xian moved and appeared in front of God Lord Feng Huan in an instant. His terrifying dragon claws tore at him once again. What a fast speed! God Lord Feng Huan's face was filled with a solemn expression when he saw Wang Xian's speed. Space storm! His body shook and 2 gigantic wind wings appeared behind his back. With the flapping of the wind wings, a violent storm ocean attacked Wang Xian. Yin and Yang extremes, seal! Wang Xian waved his arm and Taiji patterns slowly appeared around him. Following that, a huge Taiji diagram appeared around the God of Wind Expanse. The Taiji diagram revolved and completely surrounded the surrounding area of more than 10,000 kilometers. This is? Below, everyone looked at the Taiji diagram that appeared out of thin air. Their faces were filled with shock. Let's lose! Wang Xian stared at the God of Wind Expanse. With a move of his body, his dragon claws emitted a grayish energy as he attacked the God of Wind Expanse once again. He clearly hasn't comprehended any laws. How could he have such a terrifying attack power? God Lord Feng Huan's expression changed. Looking at the dragon claws that were attacking him again, he gritted his teeth. Laws, 1,000 miles of wind! His entire body was covered by a terrifying sharp light. A dazzling wind blade appeared. A green light flashed and attacked Wang Xian. Bang! 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 Wang Xian completely ignored God Lord Feng Huan's attack. His dragon claws continued to claw forward. The attack from Feng Huan landed on the Taiji diagram in front of him and produced a terrifying vibration sound. The terrifying collision sound could be heard clearly by the surrounding planets. This is bad. However, God Lord Feng Huan's heart sank at this moment. His pupils revealed a look of fear. He flapped the wind wings on his back and hurriedly fled to the side. Voila! At this moment, the Taiji diagram floating around him was like a piece of cloth, directly wrapping around him. Break for me! God Lord Wind Expanse waved his arm, and terrifying wind blades slashed at the Taiji diagram. Pum pum pum! However, what frightened him was that all of his attacks could not break through the Taiji diagram's defense. Whoosh! In the next moment, the terrifying dragon claw that was tens of thousands of meters in size went straight for him. It contained an energy that made him feel despair. I admit defeat! He quickly shouted in horror. Bang! However, there was no fluctuation on Wang Xian's face. The dragon claw was like a slap on an ant as it landed on his body. In an instant, the god of Wind Expanse spat out a large amount of blood. His face turned pale. He could feel a destructive energy entering his body and extinguishing his life force. His entire body fell heavily onto the ground. Boom! There was a loud vibration. Everyone could feel the entire planet trembling. God Lord Feng Huan's body was directly hit into the planet, sinking at least 10,000 meters deep. In the middle of the banquet square, there was a huge pit. Hiss! Everyone around sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces were filled with shock as they looked at the deep pit, their bodies trembling. Their god lord, who had stood tall in the southern domain for hundreds of thousands of years, had been easily defeated by the Dragon King. Chapter 22-26 22-26 2226 Dragon King of the Dragon Palace is here to teach for. Gulp! Wang Xian floated in the air and looked down. His face was filled with pride. He flew down step by step and stared at the huge pit. In the square, everyone couldn't help but gulp. Their faces were filled with shock. The Dragon King's strength was so strong. Such a Dragon King, such a Dragon Palace, who would be able to defeat him? Lord God! The bodies of some peak-stage immortal-level experts of Eternal Wind Expanse trembled. They looked at Wang Xian in horror and hurriedly flew into the deep pit. Cough, cough! At this moment, the God Lord of Eternal Wind Expanse, who was in an extremely sorry state and had no color on his face, slowly crawled out of the deep pit. When the group of Eternal Wind Expanse masters saw the God of Wind Expanse in such a state, they hurriedly flew over to support him. Cough, cough! The God of Wind Expanse, who was extremely weak, could not help but cough again. He spat out a huge mouthful of blood. He raised his head and stared at Wang Xian with a face full of fear. His eyes were filled with fear. He had a strong feeling that if the Dragon King wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. His eternal divine kingdom was right beside him. Even if he were to enter the eternal divine kingdom, he wouldn't be able to escape. Dragon King, I admit defeat! He was a little frightened and his body trembled slightly. Don't you think it's a little too late? Wang Xian stared at him indifferently. His face was filled with a cold expression. Previously he had asked the ocean of all the life planets in Eternal Wind Expanse to disagree. Now, it was already too late to agree. Then, Dragon King, what do you want me to do? The God of Wind Expanse clenched his teeth, clenched his fists, and roared weakly. All the oceans, plus all the resources of your Eternal Wind Expanse. Wang Xian said faintly. Dragon King, you don't go too far. The God of Wind Expanse's expression changed drastically when he heard his words. He spoke with some agitation. The expressions of all the experts around Eternal Wind Huanyu also changed greatly, and their eyes revealed anger. Who? Dragon King, we admit that your Dragon Palace's strength is very strong, but now you want all of our resources. Isn't that too much? At this time, the seven-star God Lord who stood at the side took a deep breath. His expression was uncertain. He did not expect the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace to be so powerful. Even the god of Wind Expanse was defeated so easily. What was his strength? He had comprehended the second law? Oh! Upon hearing his words, Wang Xian looked at the god of 7 stars and narrowed his eyes slightly. What I want is different from your eternal 7 stars, he said indifferently. Huh! The 7 stars lord was slightly taken aback. Ao Xingmu, Ao Crab, and Enlai! Wang Xian shouted softly. It's the Dragon King! Boom! 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 In the next moment, Ao Xingmu, Ao Crab, and the rest locked onto the 7 stars lord without any hesitation. At the same time, a vast and mighty force was emitted from their bodies. A terrifying pressure spread across a radius of hundreds of millions of kilometers. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings and even the entire planet changed drastically. They felt as if the sky was collapsing. Even the powerhouses at the peak of the godly state were kneeling down with a face full of fear and shock. Dragon Palace. There's one more god-level existence in the Dragon Palace. There's one more! All the powerhouses stared at Ao Xingmu and Wang Xian with a face full of shock. At this moment, they had no will to fight back against the Dragon Palace. The Dragon King, along with the 3 divine masters beside him, and the 4 of them. This was not counting the Dragon King's little brother, Divine Master Shan Yu. The Divine Leaf Divine Master who had a good relationship with him. The 6 divine masters had to kneel before the Dragon King even if it was the Thunder God Master and the Double Fox Divine Master who were resurrected. Is this the full power of the Dragon Palace? The experts at the peak of the godly state were trembling, and their faces were full of shock. Who could fight against the Dragon Palace? Who could fight against the Dragon King? We, Eternal Wind Expanse, are willing to submit to the Dragon King. Sensing the power of Ao Xing, Mu Ao Xie, and the others, God Lord Wind Expanse's face changed drastically. He lowered his head and said softly, We, the Eternal 7 Stars, also submit. We also submit. The God of 7 Stars swept his gaze across Ao Xingmu and the others. His eyes were filled with astonishment as he spoke loudly. Hee! Wang Xian stared at the God of 7 Stars with a mocking expression on his face. God of 7 Stars, isn't it a little too late to submit now? He asked faintly. The 7 Stars Lord was slightly stunned. He raised his head with some doubt. Back then, you informed the Thunder Lord. Do you think I don't know? I will let them off the Eternal Wind World. However, when you, the 7 Stars of Eternity, informed the Thunder Lord of the Eternal Wind World, the outcome was already decided. Wang Xian stared at him and said faintly. Buzz. As soon as Wang Xian's words were spoken, Ao Xing, with Ao Cao, Enlai, and the rest had completely locked onto him. The 3 of them instantly surrounded him. What? Upon hearing Wang Xian's words, the 7 Stars Lord's expression changed. The expressions of all the experts in the entire Eternal 7 Stars also changed. A look of fear slowly appeared in their eyes. When the Lord of Wind Expanse saw this scene, his expression also changed slightly. His body could not help but take a few steps back. It was obvious that the Dragon King wanted to destroy the 7 Stars God Lord and the Eternal 7 Stars. You! No, Dragon King, I didn't inform you! The 7 Stars God Lord's expression changed and he immediately shouted. You didn't? Hee! Wang Xian stared at him and smiled contemptuously. The surrounding energy began to gather. Ao Qitian, Ao Crab, and Enlai were ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. When the God of 7 Stars saw Wang Xian staring at him mockingly, his expression kept changing. How? How did you know? How did you know? In the end, he could not help but growl and question Wang Xian. How can a dead man have so many questions? Wang Xian said indifferently. The God of 7 Stars' pupils constricted and his expression was extremely ugly. He quickly looked at God Lord Feng Huan who was beside him. Wind Expanse, advance and retreat together. If I am killed, you will not have a good life in the future. He immediately stared at the god of wind expanse and shouted sternly. Huh! Wang Xian heard his words and looked at the god of wind expanse. Cough, cough! The god of wind expanse could not help but cough when he saw Wang Xian staring at him. 7 stars, you did not say that you once harmed the Dragon King. Do not involve us, Eternal Wind Expanse, in this matter. We, Eternal Wind Expanse, will respect the Dragon Palace and the Dragon King in the future. God Lord Wind Expanse stared at the 7-star God Lord and spoke righteously. Dragon King, although I'm injured now, if you want me to help, I can do it too. After he finished speaking, he looked at Wang Xian and spoke with a solemn expression. Everyone around was stunned when they heard God Lord Wind Expanse's words. Is he loyal? He is a little shameless. Chapter 22-27 22-27 Boundless Dragon Palace as King 1. God Lord Huanyu's submission and loyalty shocked everyone. Especially God Lord Huanyu's stern expression, which indicated that he could fight for the Dragon King, made everyone's mouths twitch. Eternal Wind World's experts and disciples couldn't help but lower their heads. This wasn't the God Lord they knew. But Eternal Wind World's experts and disciples also knew that with the current strength of the Dragon Palace's Dragon King and the others, even if they joined forces with the Eternal 7 Stars, they wouldn't be a match for him. Even if the final outcome was the best, their Eternal Wind World and the Eternal 7 Stars would still be destroyed. And their Lord God would be reduced to the same level as the Thunder God Lord. Even if the outcome was almost the same, their Lord God might die. The Dragon King's strength was too terrifying. He had severely injured their Lord God in just a minute. No one could withstand such an existence. God Lord Huanyu's submission actually made all the experts and disciples of Eternal Wind World slightly sigh in relief. As for the Eternal 7 Stars who had just shook hands and conversed with each other, forget it. Who asked you to want to harm the Dragon King? You! When the 7 Stars Master heard God Lord Feng Huan's words, his face revealed an extremely furious expression. He extended his hand and pointed at God Lord Feng Huan in excitement. His body was trembling slightly. They had just joined forces to advance and retreat. Now, he turned around and slashed. He stared at God Lord Feng Huan and swept his gaze across Wang Xian and the rest. He clenched his fists tightly. Hiss! The bodies of all the experts from the Eternal 7 Stars were trembling slightly. At this moment, their faces were filled with fear. There were currently 4 Divine Masters from the Dragon Palace, Eternal Wind Expanse, Mountain God Lord, Divine Leaf God Lord, and 6 Divine Masters. How could 6 Divine Masters fight against one of their Eternal 7 Stars? Dragon King, we, the Eternal 7 Stars, are willing to submit. The 7 Stars Lord's body was trembling slightly, and his eyes were filled with fear. Your death is already destined. Don't even think about escaping. There are people guarding your divine kingdom, Wang Xian said calmly. When he learned that the 7 Stars Lord had also come to the Eternal Wind Field, Wang Xian had already made preparations. He had Qin Feiyan and the Divine Leaf Lord head to the Eternal 7 Stars to prevent the 7 Stars Lord from escaping. Although Wang Xian could still lock onto them with his current means even if they had escaped, he could still prevent them from escaping. However, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he instructed Qin Feiyan and the Divine Leaf God Lord to stand guard there. The 7 Stars God Lord would definitely die this time. Dragon King, don't push it too far. The 7 Stars God Lord trembled violently when he heard his words. His eyes turned blood-red instantly as he roared furiously. Kill! Wang Xian looked at his furious expression and a cold look appeared in his eyes. Buzz! Ao He, Ao Qitian, and Enlai, who were surrounding the God of 7 Stars, instantly moved under Wang Xian's command. Strike the God! Ao Xingmu shouted softly. In an instant, the God of 7 Stars was covered by terrifying thorns. At the same time, Ao Xingmu, Ao He, Enlai, and the rest were also covered by thorns. A battlefield that connected to the sky was completely covered by Ao Xingmu. Wang Xian looked over, but there were no fluctuations on his face. With the strength of Ao Ke and the rest, it was a piece of cake for them to destroy the 7 Stars Divine Lord. Take down everyone from the Eternal 7 Stars immediately! At the side, the god of wind expanse looked at the area that was surrounded by the thorns that connected to the sky. Waves of terrifying energy fluctuations came from within, and a hint of horror appeared on his face. Sweeping his gaze around, God Lord Huanyu immediately ordered his disciples. It's Lord God Lord! Eternal Huanyu's disciples also knew that they had to perform well in front of the Dragon King, so they immediately shouted out respectfully. They looked coldly at all the Eternal 7 Stars disciples, and their eyes revealed a sinister look. Please don't kill us, Dragon King! All the disciples of the Eternal 7 Stars knelt on the ground in horror, and begged for mercy loudly. Kill the direct disciples of the 7 Stars Master! Wang Xian looked over and said indifferently. In order to cause unnecessary trouble, the direct disciples of the 7 Stars Master must be killed. It's the Dragon King! God Lord Huanyu nodded immediately at the side. Dragon King, we are willing to give the Dragon Palace the ocean of all the life planets in the entire southern region. We are willing to offer all the resources. He hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and continuing to speak to Wang Xian. Yes. Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. Your eternal wind expanse does not have much of a grudge against our Dragon Palace. In the future, the southern region will still be your world. Our Dragon Palace will only rule the Water Tribe. Yes, yes! When the Divine Lord of Wind Expanse heard Wang Xian's words, he heaved a sigh of relief. Ah! At this moment, a scream was heard from the area where the heaven-reaching thorns were entangled. The Lord of Wind Expanse took a look, and his eyes sparkled. In the entire boundless galaxy, the Eastern Divine Leaf God was on good terms with the Dragon Palace, while the Northern Thunderclap God Lord was on the run. The Central 7 Stars were about to be killed, while the Western Twin Foxes were already destroyed. Only Eternal Wind Expanse of the South was still around. Overall, Eternal Wind Expanse of the South had a better ending. Thinking of this, he felt much more relaxed. Although the price he had to pay was relatively high, at least Eternal Wind Expanse of the South was still around, and there were no casualties. That's good, that's good! He mumbled and secretly glanced at Wang Xian, who was beside him. In the future, the Dragon King would be revered in the entire boundless star field. With such strength and influence, no one could defeat him. He has comprehended at least 2 laws. He mumbled. Boom! 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 Buzz! 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 At this moment, the heaven and earth began to tremble. The body of the god of wind expanse trembled. Everyone around quickly raised their heads and looked at the sky. Crack! 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 In the middle of the square, the thorn that reached the sky slowly disappeared. On the ground, there was a corpse lying quietly on the ground. He was killed so quickly. Everyone around took a deep breath when they saw this scene, and their faces were full of shock. I'm so glad that the Divine Lord of the Dragon Palace made a choice just now. The Divine Lord of the Dragon Palace is not simple either. God Lord Huanyu wiped the sweat from his forehead and glanced at Ao Xie and the others with some fear. It had only been a few minutes, and he had completely killed the 7-star Divine Lord in less than a minute. Such terror! Who would dare to be his enemy? What happened? At the same time, the entire planet saw the wailing of heaven and earth, and the rain of blood pouring down from the sky. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. They raised their heads, and a wave of grief could not be stopped. This is... a God Lord has fallen! What exactly happened? Just now, God Lord Fenghuan and the Dragon King were fighting in the void, and it seemed like the 7-star God Lord was heavily injured. Could it be that God Lord Fenghuan has fallen? And what was that thorny thing just now? That vast energy that was sealed, what exactly happened? On the planet, the disciples of Eternal Huanyu and the people who had come to inquire about the news were filled with shock. Chapter 22-28. 22-28 Boundless, Dragon Palace as King 2. All Eternal Wind Universe disciples, listen up. From today onwards, the Eternal Wind Universe will be ruled by the Dragon Palace and the Dragon King as king. Everyone on the entire planet looked up at the bloody rain in the sky in shock. Someone had seen such a bloody rain before. It had covered several planets over 1,000 years ago by the eternal twin foxes. This was the heaven and earth phenomenon caused by the fall of the God Lord. The entire planet was shaking. However, at this moment, God Lord Fenghuan's voice rang out and entered everyone's ears. Everyone was slightly stunned, and then their eyes slowly widened. This is God Lord Fenghuan's voice. This Eternal Fenghuan surrenders to the Dragon King? God Lord Fenghuan is still alive. That means the 7-star God Lord has been killed by the Dragon King and the others. Oh my God, another God Lord has fallen and another God Lord has been killed by the Dragon Palace. Everyone's mouths were slightly agape. They were filled with disbelief. The matter with the 7-star God Lord has been resolved. Let's go and destroy the Thunder God Lord. Wang Xian took a glance at God Lord Fenghuan and said to Aohe and the rest, "It's the Dragon King." Aohe and the rest nodded their heads. "Dragon King, you go and destroy the Lord of Shocking Thunder. Do you know where he is?" When the Lord of Universal Wind heard Wang Xian's words, his body trembled. "You can check." Wang Xian looked at him indifferently. Buzz. With a wave of his arm, the blood vessels of the formation were connected. The mirror image of the formation. The two formations were activated instantly. In front of them, the scene of the eternal divine kingdom of the Lord of Shocking Thunder appeared. Formation Black Hole! Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. He set up the black hole formation and looked at the surrounding members of the Dragon Palace. "Let's go!" he said faintly. "Yes." Aohe, Ao Xingmu, and the rest nodded immediately. The group of Dragon Palace members entered the black hole. Wang Xian walked to the front of the black hole and waved his arm. He took the bloodlines in his hand. Buzz. The next moment, he stepped into the black hole and disappeared instantly. When God Lord Fenghuan saw this scene, he was shocked. "What is this? A formation?" His eyes sparkled. As a God Lord, he knew a little about formations. When he saw such a method, his eyes were filled with shock. The picture just now is the divine kingdom of the Thunder God Lord. The Dragon King found the Thunder God Lord through this method. No wonder the Twin Fox God Lord had already escaped back to the divine kingdom, and was killed by the Dragon King and the others. This method. Fear flashed in the eyes of the Wind Expanse God Lord. Was such a strange method, even if he wanted to escape, he couldn't. Who? Eternal Wind Expanse disciples, prepare all the resources we have and send them to the Boundless Sea Dragon Palace. He ordered the disciples around him. Yes. The Eternal Wind Expanse disciples who had witnessed the Dragon King's strength weren't surprised at all and immediately responded. What happened on Eternal Wind Expanse's side spread to the other planets at a terrifying speed. When everyone learned that the 7-star God Lord had been killed by the Dragon King and Eternal Wind Expanse had submitted, countless people were shocked. One had been killed, and the other had submitted. The entire boundless star field was now under the control of the Dragon Palace. When the other big and small forces in the boundless star field received the news, they were all shocked, and their eyes sparkled. Even the Eternal Wind World had submitted to them. What about them? In the past, the 5 great God Lords kept each other in check, and the God Lord level forces couldn't spread far. Now that the God Lord level forces had submitted, and the Dragon Palace wanted the ocean of all the planets, why wouldn't they submit? Even if the Dragon Palace didn't need them to submit, they had to show their loyalty. All the forces had decided to go to the Boundless Sea as soon as possible to show their loyalty and give them treasures. Just as the news of the 7-star God Lord being destroyed by the Dragon Palace and Eternal Wind Universe submitting spread to all the planets. In the east at the edge of the eastern region. Further east at the edge of the eastern region was the boundless void. The boundless star field was very large, but many people in the boundless star field didn't know about the void further away. The universe was vast and boundless, and the universe was more like a lifeless void. Take the surroundings of the infinite star field as an example. No one knew what galaxy was around the infinite star field. Even the eternal God Lord had never left the infinite star field before. There was once a God Lord who flew in a certain direction for a few years, but didn't find any galaxy and came straight back. God Masters were also afraid of being lost in the vast void space. Besides, the universe was not completely silent. There were universe storms, space beasts, and universe turbulence. There were also some naturally formed dead lands that were extremely dangerous. In the face of some universe disasters, God Masters were like ants. In a void space close to the edge of the eastern region, there was a distance of more than 1 billion kilometers from the eastern region. At such a distance, and in such a deep place, there were no signs of life. And in the center of a few meteorites, there was a vast eternal kingdom located in the center. After the Thunder God Lord escaped from the energy tide, he directly escaped into this void. The eternal kingdom was very large, and there were many of his lovers and servants in it. The Thunder God Lord was prepared to hide here for more than 10 years before he left. He didn't believe that the Dragon Palace would keep looking for him. In a hall in the Eternal Kingdom, he was sitting and reading some information. Although he was hiding here, he still had some loyal subordinates who were sending him some information about the endless star field. Whoosh! 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 Boom! 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 At this moment, the entire Eternal Kingdom suddenly trembled. What happened? The Thunder God Lord was slightly stunned. He moved his body and immediately appeared in the sky above the Eternal Kingdom. Dragon King! When he arrived in the sky above the Eternal Kingdom, and saw one immortal in the void, he was slightly shocked. His expression instantly darkened and revealed a panicked look. Dragon King, how did you guys find this place? He widened his eyes and roared at them with a gloomy face. You don't need to know. Kill him, Wang Xian said indifferently. Yes. In an instant, Ao He, Ao Xingmu, and the rest began to move. At this moment, the surrounding thorns had sealed off the entire Divine Kingdom. Even the Divine Kingdom was entangled by thorns. Damn it! Damn it! Feeling the terrifying might of Ao He and the other two, his heart pounded violently. Why was there another god-level powerhouse in the Dragon Palace? His face was filled with disbelief. Run, run, run! The Thunder God Lord had no intention of resisting. His body shook and he was prepared to flee immediately. The entire Eternal Divine Kingdom emitted vast thunderbolts that covered a radius of tens of millions of kilometers. Can you escape? Wang Xian floated in the void quietly. Looking at the anxious and terrified Thunder God Lord, his face was filled with mockery. With the current Dragon Palace, it was too easy to kill the Lord of Thunderbolt. Chapter 2229 2229 Boundless, Dragon Palace as King 3. Devour! In the vast void, the Dragon Palace slowly emerged behind Wang Xian and started to devour the vast Eternal Kingdom. The Thunder God Lord was dead. Wang Xian was not surprised by this result at all. After finding his hiding place, the fate of the Thunder God Lord was already decided. This was the third God Lord who died at the hands of the Dragon Palace. One of them had comprehended the Fire Law, one of the Thunder Law, and one of the Earth Law. The 3 laws corresponded to the 3 divine kingdoms. If the Dragon Palace wanted to level up, they still needed to devour the eternal divine kingdoms with the other 6 attributes. Let's go back! As Wang Xian spoke, he immediately set up a black hole array and flew toward the center of the boundless sea. Let's go and take Hua and Kair with us so that they won't blame themselves. Halfway through, when he passed by the eternal divine leaf, Wang Xian paused for a moment and revealed a smile on his face. He took a look at the starry sky chart and immediately flew towards the location of the eternal divine leaf. In the eternal divine kingdom of the divine leaf god, after Wang Xian arrived, he asked the members of the Dragon Palace to wait. Dragon King! Greetings, Dragon King! When everyone in the eternal divine leaf saw Wang Xian, their bodies trembled slightly. They hurriedly greeted Wang Xian. Okay. Wang Xian nodded his head faintly and walked straight in. Along the way, all the disciples of Eternal Leaf stopped immediately when they saw Wang Xian and greeted him respectfully. Who didn't know about the strength of the Dragon King, the Dragon Palace's Eternal Leaf? This was especially so when the news of the Seven Stars Divine Lord being destroyed by the Dragon Palace and Eternal Wind World's submission was first reported to Eternal Leaf. Everyone was extremely shocked. Now that they saw the Dragon King, they all greeted him respectfully. I remember that 5 or 6 years ago, the Dragon King stepped into our Eternal Divine Leaf as the godfathers of the 2 princesses. At that time, the Dragon King's strength was at most 9 wisps of divine fire, and the Dragon Palace was also a nameless force. Now that the Dragon King's strength is heaven-defying, and the Dragon Palace is invincible in the world, this is really the luck of our Dongfang Divine Leaf. Yeah, who would have thought that the Dragon Palace, which came from the Vipralopa land, would be so terrifying now? The current Dragon Palace can easily destroy us. Some people looked at Wang Xian's back and whispered among themselves. Dragon King! When they approached the Eternal Divine Tree, the surrounding guards immediately bowed respectfully. Yes, I'm here to look for the 2 girls. Wang Xian nodded at them and said with a smile. Dragon King, the 2 princesses are inside. I'll bring you there. The guards led the way respectfully. Soon, there were a few experts from the Eternal Divine Leaves around Wang Xian. Each of them pointed the way. Huar Kair! When they arrived above the Eternal Divine Tree, Wang Xian shouted into the tree. Old Wang, you still know to come and look for us. The 2 girls who knew that Wang Xian was coming ran out from the tree and said with displeasure on their faces. This was the second time that Wang Xian had come to look for them in 5 to 6 years. Naturally, the 2 girls had a lot of opinions. Aren't you a little busy? Now that everything has been settled, I'm here to bring you to the Dragon Palace of the Boundless Sea to have some fun. Wang Xian stroked their heads with a smile on his face. Are you a little busy? Why did we hear that our Dragon King killed the 2 fox gods and exterminated the eternal 2 foxes in a fit of anger? Hua rolled her eyes at him and teased him. Hee, who did you 2 girls listen to? Are you leaving or not? I've gotten a lot of good stuff recently. You can choose whatever you like as compensation. Wang Xian laughed and quickly changed the topic. Hee, you said it yourself? We will bring mother along this time. Huar Kair's eyes lit up, and she quickly nodded her head. All right. Let's go together. You can stay there for a few years and tour the boundless galaxy. In the future, no one will dare to bully you in the entire boundless galaxy. Wang Xian said with a smile. Although Huar Kair was the daughter of the Master of God, they didn't dare to step into the northern region in the past. Neither did they dare to rashly enter the territory of other Masters of God. Now, who would dare to provoke them? Haha, that's right. Who would dare to provoke us in the future? Humph. The 2 little girls raised their heads with pride on their faces. Their faces were filled with pride. Little brother Wang Xian. At this moment, Madame Xinai, who had received the news, walked over with a smile on her face. She greeted Wang Xian with a smile. Mom, let's go. Let's go to the Boundless Sea and old Wang's place. Huar Kair said excitedly. Madame Xinai, you look good. Wang Xian looked at Huar Kair's mother with a glint in his eyes. Back then, her face was full of snow-white hair. Now, her hair had turned black and her body had undergone a huge change. My lifespan was forcefully extended by Xingyi. I have to thank little brother Wang Xian for the current situation. Since you are going to use the divine branches to put out the fire, I have now comprehended a hint of the law of spring after a dead tree. Madame Xingyi said with a smile. Oh? You have comprehended a hint of the law. Madame Shinai, Huar, and Kair are going to the Dragon Palace this time. With the help of some treasures in the Dragon Palace, Madame Shinai, you will be able to level up to the level of an eternal divine lord. Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and said, Really, old Wang? Huar's eyes lit up. She grabbed his arm and said excitedly, You two girls should know the energy of the ancestral tree in the Dragon Palace. There shouldn't be too much of a problem. Furthermore, some of the treasures in the Dragon Palace are enough to build an eternal divine kingdom. Wang Xian said with a smile. Thank you, little brother Wang Xian. A hint of excitement flashed across Madame Xinye's eyes. Moi. The two girls smiled happily. Let's go, let's go. They grabbed Wang Xian's arm and said happily, All right, we just killed the Lord of Thunderbolt and passed by here. There are still members of the Dragon Palace outside. Let's go. Wang Xian nodded and said to the two girls, Lord of Shocking Thunder? Old Wang, have you found him? The two girls were slightly stunned and asked immediately, Can he escape from my hands? Wang Xian joked, Awesome, awesome, let's go. Huar Kair walked out happily. Buzz. Prime Minister Gui, inform everyone that the Dragon Palace will host a banquet for all the forces in the boundless galaxy in 10 days. Also, announce that the Dragon Palace will open its Dragon Gate in 10 days. All aquatic creatures that pass through the Dragon Gate can join the Dragon Palace. He brought Huar Kair and their mother to the Dragon Palace. He ordered Prime Minister Gui. Now that the Double Fox God Lord, the Thunder God Lord, and the Seven Star God Lord had been destroyed, Eternal Wind had submitted, and Dongfang Shinai had become his friend. Then it was time for the Dragon Palace to announce to the world that they were sovereign. Moreover, the Dragon Palace would also need to recruit a large number of disciples. Chapter 2230 2230 Boundless, Dragon Palace as King 4. More than a year ago, the Seven-Star God Lord told the Thunder God Lord that the Seven-Star God Lord had been killed by the Dragon Palace and the Eternal Wind had submitted. It is said that the Thunder God Lord has been killed by the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace. The entire boundless star field is now under the control of the Dragon Palace. In addition, the Dragon King will invite all the forces of the boundless star field to a banquet in the boundless star field in 10 days. At the same time, he will announce a huge news. All the aquatic divine beasts and demon beasts of the boundless star field can break through the Dragon Palace's Dragon Gate. Intruders can join the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace will only accept disciples from the aquatic divine beasts. This is the good news for all the aquatic divine beasts and demon beasts. Crazy, crazy, all the aquatic creatures have gone crazy after hearing this news. The news of the Seven-Star God Lord's death, the news of Eternal Wind's submission, and the Dragon Palace's banquet spread across the entire boundless region. The first reaction of everyone and all the factions after receiving the news was to prepare to head to the boundless sea in 10 days. The water tribe demonic beasts and divine beasts became even crazier and immediately set off to head to the boundless sea. Join the Dragon Palace. This was a sky-high achievement for any water tribe creature. What kind of existence was the Dragon Palace now? It was the overlord of the entire boundless starfield. As long as one could join the Dragon Palace, it was equivalent to a sky-high achievement. Countless demonic beasts and divine beasts immediately headed to the boundless sea. All the forces were preparing all kinds of treasures and resources to come. Who dared to disobey the order of the Dragon King now? Little brother Wang Xian, thank you so much. Little brother, your Dragon Palace is a little special. In the future, I'll inform someone to free up the sea. Your Dragon Palace can build a Dragon Palace there. At this moment, in the Dragon Palace, Divine Master Shinai was looking at his wife who was cultivating under the ancestral tree with her legs crossed. His face was filled with excitement. When he looked at the ancestral tree, he was also extremely excited. Haha, thank you very much, brother Shinai. Wang Xian smiled and revealed a smile. We are a family. It's too polite to say too much. Divine Leaf Master shook his head. Now that his two daughters were doted on by the Dragon King, they could even choose the treasures in the eternal divine kingdom of the seven-star master of the God of Thunder. His wife was cultivating in the Dragon Palace and had the chance to comprehend the laws and become the eternal master. In that case, what else could he, Divine Leaf Master, ask for? With the relationship between his daughters, what was wrong with giving the planets to the Dragon King, let alone the ocean? After all, everyone knew that the boundless galaxy would belong to the Dragon Palace in the future. As the two daughters of the Dragon King and the two pampered girls, the boundless galaxy would belong to the two girls as well. Haha, that's true. Brother Shinai will stay here for a period of time and leave after sister-in-law becomes the God Lord. Brother Shinai and the disciples of Eternal Shinai will also come to the banquet in a few days. Wan Xian said to him. All right. Sorry to bother you then. Haha, I won't bother you. The last time I went to Eternal Shinai, Brother Shinai treated me with great hospitality. This time, I will be the host. The two of them laughed and conversed. Old Wang, come over here. Sister Feng Wan has lit the 9th wisp of divine fire. At this moment, Hua Er's loud voice could be heard. Wan Xian shook his head and gestured to the divine leaf god before flying towards the dragon field. When he arrived at the dragon field, Wan Xian saw a pair of wings sprouting from Feng Wan's back in the sky. She was flapping her wings beautifully. Feng Wan! Wan Xian looked at the girls around him and shouted at Feng Wan. Little Xian, I have lit up the 9th wisp of divine fire. Now, I can fight against the god. Feng Wan said with a smile. There's no rush to cultivate slowly. Don't tire yourself out. Wan Xian walked over and patted her head. I know. Feng Wan nodded her head. Ever since Qing Yu and Lingxiu left, the group of girls had been cultivating diligently. Apparently, the previous incident had dealt a huge blow to them. In the next period of time, you guys should stop cultivating and tour the boundless sea with the two little girls. Tour the entire boundless star field. I'll settle the matter between Qingwei and Lingxiu in the future. I'll get them back. You guys must know that Qingwei is the only ancient god Kun-herding master in the universe. Wan Xian consoled the group. Wan Xian wasn't too worried about Lan Qingwei and son Lingxiu. It had been more than a year now and nothing had happened to the two of them. It was unlikely that anything would happen to them in the future. Lan Qingwei, who had the inheritance of the ancient god's Kun-feeding master, had many tricks up her sleeves. The Kun in the universe fed on the dragons and phoenixes, which were peak bloodlines. The next time they met, Lan Qingwei might be even more powerful. Okay. The group of girls nodded their heads and felt a little better. In the next few days, Wan Xian accompanied the group of girls to stroll around the boundless sea. Wan Xian was not too familiar with the boundless sea. The group of them were relaxed and happy every day. During these few days, all the major forces in the boundless galaxy surged into the boundless sea. Almost 50% of the experts and disciples of the eternal wind expanse and eternal divine leaf had come. Tens of billions of people had gathered around the boundless sea. Around the boundless sea, many continents were floating. As Wan Xian's mother planet, Earth was also brought to the sky above the boundless sea by Wang Xian. The entire boundless sea was bustling and bustling. The arrival of all the major forces did not cause any commotion. There wasn't even any conflict. This was because no one dared to fight here. Apart from the tens of billions of people, there were also tens of billions of aquatic creatures. There were even more aquatic creatures rushing over. Once they could break through the Dragon Gate, they would leap over the Dragon Gate and soar into the sky. This is our Earth's Dragon Palace, the Dragon King! All the people on Earth looked at this grand event with pride on their faces. Now, when they walked out and talked about coming from Earth, all of them looked at them with envy. Even the disciples of some powerful forces didn't dare to provoke the people of Earth for no reason. Set up the formation! On the last day of the 10-day banquet, all the members of the Firehammer clan of the Dragon Palace flew to the sky above the boundless sea. They floated to the surface of the sea and took out formation compasses. These were the compasses they had made. The compasses were thrown into the sky, and a huge dreamy space appeared out of thin air. They used the earth element to form a ground, and the metal element to form tables and chairs. It was a vast square that could be entered by hundreds of millions of people. At the front of the square, there were two big words, Dragon Palace. The two words were shining and giving off a vast power. Hiss, what's that? On the surrounding continents, everyone was shocked when they saw the majestic square formed by the array formation. Tomorrow, we will worship the Dragon King! At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with awe. Chapter 2231 2231 2231 Lord of the Endless Sea. Enter one by one and find a place to sit according to your strength. The next morning, a voice sounded in the sky above the endless sea. Tens of billions of people had gathered around the endless sea. When they heard the voice, they immediately flew toward the square that was formed by the formation above the endless sea. At the entrance, Ao Yiksha, a member of the Dragon Protection Department of the Dragon Palace, led his subordinates to guard it. He held a trident in his hand and was about 3 meters tall. Each of his body exuded a powerful force. The Dragon Palace had destroyed the Eternal Twin Foxes, the Eternal Thunderbolts, and the Eternal Seven Stars. The number of members who had lit the divine fire in the Dragon Palace had reached more than 2,000. Among them, 3,000 members had reached the peak of the demigod realm and possessed the combat power of a wisp of divine fire. In the past year, the Dragon Palace's strength had increased tremendously. Come on, let's go! I haven't seen the Dragon King yet. I'm finally lucky enough to see him today. I wonder what the Dragon King will announce today. Some people entered with curiosity, awe, and worry. To build such a huge and majestic square in just a few minutes, the Dragon Palace is really powerful. Some people entered the huge and majestic square, their eyes full of shock. At the front of the square, there was a huge statue of a divine dragon. The 7-colored divine dragon was exuding a powerful majesty. Even a statue is exuding a terrifying aura. The forces that came and looked around with their eyes wide open. Those are the people from the Eternal Divine Leaf. The people from the Eternal Divine Leaf have arrived early. Some people looked to the left of the center and saw that there were already several million people gathered there. I heard that the 2 daughters of the Divine Leaf Master who went missing and died were raised by the Dragon King after they were resurrected. The relationship between the Eternal Divine Leaf and the Dragon King is very good. Some people heard some rumors and discussed in low voices. That's someone from the Eternal Chen clan. According to Divine Lord Shan Yu's wife, the Dragon King is the savior of Divine Lord Shan Yu. Now that the Dragon King has let the Eternal Chen clan control the western region, I'm really envious. That Divine Lord Shan Yu's wife is really lucky. Divine Lord Shan Yu is the youngest Eternal Divine Lord. Lucky? Then you don't know who the Mountain God Lord's wife is? The Mountain God Lord's wife is the biological sister of the Dragon King's only disciple, the Dragon Queen's disciple. Damn, I didn't expect the Mountain God Lord's wife to have such a deep background. The people who came and looked at the Eternal Chen clan's position and discussed animatedly. See, the one next to the Eternal Chen clan is the Dragon King's disciple. He has already ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. Only 7 wisps of divine fire? The power of 7 wisps of divine fire is a little low. What do you know? This disciple of the Dragon King is only in his 30s. You said that his power is a little low. FUCK, he lit 7 wisps of divine fire in his 30s. How is this possible? How is this possible? Discussions and exclamations could be heard as the various major forces walked toward the seats one by one. Make way, make way! Eternal Wind Expanse Master has arrived. He has personally brought his disciples here. At this moment, voices could be heard from behind, and some people hurriedly made way. The once 5 great God Lords of the Endless Star Field were now only left with God Lord Xin Ai and God Lord Fenghuan. Although Eternal Wind Expanse had submitted to the Dragon Palace, their strength had not decreased. Now, apart from the Dragon Palace and Eternal Divine Leaf, they were still the strongest. Even the Eternal Chin clan was much weaker than them. Hee hee! God Lord Wind Expanse, who was standing at the front, glanced around and walked straight toward the unknown. Little brother Shao Ran, Mountain God Lord! God Lord Wind Expanse walked to the position next to the Eternal Chin clan and cupped his hands toward Shao Ranchin and the others. God Lord Wind Expanse! The two immediately stood up and responded politely. Haha, there's no one around, right? Then we'll take our seats. God Lord Huan Yu gestured to the seats next to him and said with a smile. God Lord Huan Yu, Eternal Huan Yu, please take your seats. Chen Feiyang raised his head slightly and said. Eternal Huan Yu and the others sat next to him with smiles on their faces. More and more people gathered in the square. Soon, there were more than 100 million people. The members of the Fox Mark Divine clan are here. All of a sudden, surprised voices arose. At least tens of millions of people looked at the entrance. The Fox Mark Divine clan is the one who has reached the sky in one step. Some people said slowly. Walking past the members of the Fox Mark Divine clan in front of so many people, they were filled with emotion. More than a year ago, they had a glorious time. However, that glorious time was only in the western region. Now, it was in the entire Boundless Star area. From the looks of the other forces, they could see how envious the Fox Pattern Divine clan was. Hu Fei has really given birth to a good daughter. Some disciples of the Fox Pattern Divine clan slightly raised their heads, their faces full of pride. The Hu and Celestial race had been walking forward, sitting next to the Eternal Divine Leaf. In 2 hours, almost all the forces in the Endless Star Field had arrived. Buzz! At this time, Divine Lord Shinai and his wife walked out from the seabed behind them, heading straight for the Eternal Divine Leaf. The Dragon King is coming out! Seeing Divine Master Shinai and the rest coming out, some people thought to themselves. Roar! At this moment, a dragon roar came from behind. Splash! On the surface of the water in front of them, figures slowly emerged. Wan Xian stood at the center and was surrounded by 10 girls. Prime Minister Gui stood at the right and front, while a group of dragon guards accompanied him at the back. Wan Xian, who was draped in a colorful dragon robe, swept his gaze across everyone around him and walked forward indifferently. A group of girls and members of the Dragon Palace followed behind him. Buzz! When Wang Xian arrived at the front of the dragon throne, everyone from all the factions and demonic beasts stood up in unison. Paying respects to the Dragon King! A deafening voice resonated in the sky above the boundless sea. All of them bowed and cupped their fists. Their faces were filled with respect. Sit down! Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. His voice entered everyone's ears. Thank you, Dragon King! Everyone from all the factions responded quickly and sat down on their seats. They looked at Wang Xian in awe and swept their gaze across everyone around him. That's the group of dragon queens. The 2 twins should be the daughters of the god of Shinai. As expected, the 2 daughters of the god of Shinai have a very high status in the Dragon Palace. That's Hu Yan'er from the Hu and Celestial race. Some of them saw the group of girls sitting on the dragon throne and imprinted it into their minds. This was an existence that they could not afford to offend. It was also someone they needed to please. Chapter 2232. 2232 On the battlefield of 2232 Divine Emperor. The Dragon Palace has gathered everyone here for no other reason. Firstly, the Dragon Palace will build a branch palace in the ocean of the life stars in the entire boundless galaxy. Secondly, from today onwards, all aquatic creatures will be able to break through the Dragon Gate. Those who break into the Dragon Palace will become disciples of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace will not be involved in the rest of the matters in the boundless galaxy. Please do not harm the heavens. Wang Xian's voice reverberated in everyone's mind. He didn't say too many things. The Dragon Palace was only in charge of the ocean in the boundless galaxy. The Dragon Palace couldn't do anything else. Currently, the Dragon Palace only had more than 50,000 disciples and 700 to 800 life planets in the boundless galaxy. In comparison, the Dragon Palace had too few people. It was already considered good enough to be able to control the ocean completely. Even if the Dragon Palace recruited a large number of members in the future, the number would only be more than 100,000 at most. Of course, there was a prerequisite. The devouring dragon in Ao Crab's body was not included. The devouring dragon in Ao Crab's body had now reached more than 1,000,000. However, this devouring dragon could not be compared to the ordinary members of the Dragon Palace. Next, the major forces offered congratulatory gifts to the Dragon King, the Dragon Palace, and so on. Every force that could enter this place had a few godly state experts. The items that they brought out were at least at the godly state level. The gifts that were sent over by so many forces were also extremely huge resources. They were even comparable to the treasure trove of an eternal level force. All kinds of treasures were sent over. At the last moment, even the Divine Leaf Master sent a gift. It was a withered sapling. When Wang Xian looked at the sapling, he could feel the ancestral tree trembling slightly. This made his eyes light up. However, Wang Xian did not look at it on the spot. The entire huge banquet lasted for about 5 hours. The Dragon Palace had prepared some food. More than 100 million people were dining together. Such a scene was extremely grand. Since the end of the banquet, it was time for countless aquatic creatures to celebrate. Countless aquatic creatures rushed toward the Dragon Gate crazily. They jumped through the Dragon Gate and turned into dragons. As long as they could enter the Dragon Palace and become disciples of the Dragon Palace, they would become existences that no one dared to provoke in the endless star field. In the next few days, thousands of new members of the Dragon Palace joined every day. The Dragon Palace also began to cultivate the aquatic creatures that joined. Currently, the number of berserk dragon species in the Dragon Palace had reached a few hundred, and there were also 50 to 60 thorn dragon species. The strength of the Dragon Palace was improving rapidly every day. The Windbreaker Tree? Windbreaker Tree? In the Dragon King's Hall of the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian stood in front of the ancestral tree and looked at the branch of the Windbreaker Tree. His eyes were sparkling. This branch was given to him by the Divine Leaf God that day. This branch was one of the 3 branches that the Divine Leaf God had obtained when he was given a great opportunity. One of the branches was almost withered while the other branch of the eternal divine tree was nurtured and placed in his eternal divine kingdom. The last one was this Windbreaker Tree. According to the Divine Leaf God, this Windbreaker Tree was placed at the center. Its level is comparable to the soul-returning wood, endless wood. Other than increasing the cultivation speed of the members of the Wind Attribute Dragon Palace by 4 times, it doesn't seem to be of much use at the moment. Wang Xian mumbled to himself. Now he had the endless wood, the soul-returning wood, the serval tree, and the nirvana lightning tree. Each of these trees possessed powerful abilities, especially the soul-returning wood. My young friend, you have almost settled your matters here. When are you leaving? This area is still too remote. The spiritual energy is still considered average, but it's a little difficult to comprehend the laws. There are also fewer resources. With your talent, if you stay here for 1 more day, you will be wasting 1 day of your life. At this moment, the phantom of the God of Heaven's formation appeared before Wang Xian and spoke to him. Go to that bright land? Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling. That's right. I'll find a backer for you when you get there so that you can increase your strength quickly. Also, didn't your little girlfriend also enter that place? It's a good time to go and look for her. The Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said directly. Yes, we have to go, but we have to wait. Wang Xian looked hesitant. Now that the Dragon Palace was the king of the boundless galaxy, and the Dragon Palace controlled most of the resources, the members of the Dragon Palace would improve very quickly in the future. However, it would be much more difficult to advance to the level of the Eternal Divine Lord. In fact, the current resources were no longer sufficient to support the members of the Dragon Palace to reach the level of the Eternal Divine Lord. Regardless of whether it was the resources of the boundless galaxy that had reached its limit or the matter of the beautiful green moon, Wang Xian had to go to that dazzling place. However, he wasn't planning to go there for the next 2 years. He had to accompany a group of girls and be fully prepared. Since young friend wants to wait, let's wait a little longer. During this period of time, you can learn the rest of the formations. It was obvious that the god of formation wanted Wang Xian to inherit his Tao of formations. Even if Wang Xian wanted to be his disciple, he also knew that Wang Xian's inheritance wasn't something that his Tao of formations could compare to. Unless he was a great wizard, he would only be qualified to take Wang Xian as his disciple. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head. Although the art of formations was of little value to Wang Xian in terms of combat, it was very good in terms of support, especially when it came to searching for people and targeting enemies. In the following period of time, Wang Xian accompanied a group of girls every day. When he was free, he would follow the god of formation to cultivate formations. The group of girls also knew that Wang Xian might be leaving after a period of time. They also cherished the time when he was around. Time passed slowly. A year or 2 years passed in the blink of an eye for them. 3 years later, Wang Xian brought the group of girls back to the Dragon Palace from the outside. During these 3 years, they toured more than half of the boundless star field and toured more than half of the mountains and rivers of the boundless star field. During the 3 years of free time, Wang Xian had also simulated the laws of formations and established the laws. Although he had mastered quite a lot of the laws of formations, with his strength, he could only set up a level 1 formation of a master god. His combat strength could at most fight against a master god who had mastered 2 laws. Overall, his Tao of formations was still inferior to his own strength. After all, even a great wizard could only fight against a peak divine dragon. Back in the Dragon Palace within a radius of thousands of kilometers was much more lively than before. Now, the members of the Dragon Palace had reached about 150,000. In 3 years, the Dragon Palace had increased by 100,000, and the number of members of the Dragon Palace was still increasing. After all the water tribes in the Endless Star Field wanted to join the Dragon Palace. The number of water tribes was more than 1 trillion. Each member of the Dragon Palace was 1 in 100 million, or even 1 in 1 billion. The strength of the Dragon Palace had improved a lot in the past few years. With the resources that the Dragon Palace controlled, more than 10 godly state experts could be born every day. The number of members who had lit the godly fire had exceeded 5,000. Chapter 2233 2233 Divine Emperor Battlefield. There were 5,000 members of the Dragon Palace who had ignited the divine fire. There were also 10,000 peak stage demigod experts. All in all, it was equivalent to 15,000 divine realm experts. This number was absolutely invincible in the entire endless star field. Even if all the other gods were added together, there were not so many. However, this power was very weak in the eyes of the divine Emperor Tianqin. In his words, the divine realm was a stage that belonged to the heaven's chosen divine sons. Those who were less than 500 years old in the resplendent land were collectively known as youths. Those who were less than 2,000 years old were collectively known as youths. There, many youths had already stepped into the divine realm. As for those heaven's chosen divine sons, they had already ignited 7 or 8 wisps, or even 9 wisps of divine fire when they were young. There were even some who had reached the peak of the godly state when they were young. And in the boundless galaxy, it was undoubtedly a pipe dream to reach 7 or 8 wisps of godly fire in 2,000 years. Xiao Ran had reached such strength at such a young age because he relied on Wang Xian. He had consumed the eternal embryo fruit and the eternal embryo fruit. These 2 fruits belonged to the pinnacle of the universe. Chen Feiyang was able to reach the godly master realm at such a young age because he was too lucky to obtain the inheritance of 2 godly masters consecutively. For a young man to have the strength of a god level, one could imagine how terrifying that place was. A powerful force, an army of tens of millions of warriors, all of them were at the God level. The eternal God Lord might only be a commander, only an undying God King could be a general. A land of cultivation. And according to Tianqin God Emperor, and the inheritance of the Dragon God, the true glorious land, the center of the universe with the richest resources. There, it was as glorious as the primeval era. The universe nurtured the most precious treasures of heaven and earth, and all races competed for it. Giants could chase the sun, draw a bow and shoot the sun, and uproot mountains and rivers. Even the celestial emperor of heaven's formation did not set foot in such a glorious place. Dragon King! Just as Wang Xian was deep in thought, Prime Minister Gui walked in and greeted him respectfully. The Dragon Palace will have to trouble you for the next period of time, Wang Xian said to him. Don't worry, Dragon King! Prime Minister Gui nodded his head heavily. I will make a trip out tomorrow. I don't know when I will be back for the time being. As Wang Xian spoke, he looked at the girls around him. We have been playing for 3 years. On the day you leave, we will also be in closed-door cultivation, the girls said to him. Let's go. Let's have a good rest tonight, Wang Xian said to them with a smile. The group of girls rolled their eyes at him. The next morning, Wang Xian came directly to the side of the energy tide through the teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace. Behind him, the group of girls, Hua Kair, Master Chen Feiyang, and the rest followed him. Dragon King, this is the treasure-seeking ant that you left behind with us. An expert from the Eternal Divine Leaf walked over and handed the treasure-seeking ant to him. I almost forgot about this little guy. Wang Xian smiled and reached out to take it. Let's go back. When my cultivation base reaches the level of the Eternal Divine Master, I will be able to return to the Dragon Palace directly. He turned around to look at the people behind him and said with a smile. Little Xian, be careful. The group of girls said to him with concern. Don't worry. Wang Xian nodded his head heavily. Xiao Xian, you must bring Qin Yu and Ling Xiu back. Leave it to me. Wang Xian nodded his head at them. Then, he waved his hand and looked at the energy-tied black hole in front of him. Heaven formation, are you sure that the incipient saint wings can ignore the violent energy inside? He walked to the entrance of the energy-tied black hole and transmitted his voice to the Divine Emperor of Sky formation behind him. Don't worry. I obtained this incipient saint wings by accident. It's very mysterious. Even when I was at my peak, I couldn't destroy it at all. However, I haven't been able to find out what abilities it has. Its level is definitely higher than the Divine Emperor of Void. The Sky Array God Emperor replied. Buzz. Wang Xian nodded his head. His body shook and the incipient saint wings appeared on his back. He moved his body and stepped into the black hole of the energy tide. The enormous energy tide contained a terrifying power. A God Master who had comprehended a law had to unleash his full strength in order to withstand this terrifying energy. However, the incipient saint wings completely ignored this energy and flew forward at a terrifying speed. This black hole was a little strange. It didn't appear in front of him the moment he stepped into it. Clearly, the distance between the black hole was a little long. Wang Xian flew in the pitch-black black hole for a few hours without seeing the end. The further he went in, the more violent the energy became. The distance between this black hole is so long. How did this black hole form? Wang Xian asked the God of Heaven's formation with some doubts. The heaven-nibbling black hole is an extremely terrifying formation. I died in this formation. The deep voice entered Wang Xian's ears, causing him to be slightly stunned. The heaven-nibbling formation. The moment the formation is activated, tens of thousands of black holes will appear instantly. With the power of the black holes, everything in the formation will be torn apart. The God of Heaven's formation's voice continued to enter his ears. Your enemy is very strong in that bright land? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and asked. One of the top few. The God of formation said plainly. But my young friend, don't worry. I have already fallen. No one will think that I'm still alive. Okay. Wang Xian nodded. Looking at the black hole in the void in front of him, he continued to accelerate. Are we there yet? After flying for more than 30 times and disappearing, a ray of light appeared in front of him. Be careful. That battle back then affected tens of billions of kilometers. The entire space has turned into an energy turbulence. This turbulence might cause the immortal king to fall. Listen to my command. At this moment, the voice of the god of heaven's formation suddenly entered Wang Xian's mind. He nodded his head with a solemn expression. Buzz. Light appeared, but this kind of light was very strange. Red, green, blue, and green lights were reflected in his eyes. In the surroundings, energy was wreaking havoc. A large number of stars and meteorites were wreaking havoc in the space. Wang Xian took a glance at his surroundings. His eyes were filled with shock. Fly to the right. The god of heaven's formation immediately commanded. Wang Xian did not hesitate at all. He flew straight to the right. In the surroundings, Wang Xian could see many weapons floating in the air. There were also skeletons that were emitting light. The energy contained in these skeletons made Wang Xian's heart palpitate. Occasionally, he could see weapons floating in the air. Some were good and some were bad. All of them were divine weapons. Did you kill all these corpses? Wang Xian took a glance at them. He could see many of these corpses that contained powerful energy. It was hard to imagine how many of them there were in the entire area. If these corpses were collected, they could easily be forged into powerful divine weapons. Ha ha ha, although they have ambushed the celestial emperor of Tianqing, they will have to pay a heavy price if they want to kill me. Proud voice from Tianqing God Emperor's mouth. Chapter 2234. 2234 in the Divine Emperor battlefield. Haha, that battle lasted for a whole year. The number of immortal godly monarchs who died in my hands reached more than 100,000. The number of godly master-level powerhouses was in the millions, and there were countless godly stage powerhouses. If they knew that I'm not dead yet and that they encountered an existence like you, they would definitely die of anger. Ha ha! An extremely carefree voice came from the god of formation's mouth. However, when Wang Xian heard his words, he was shocked. There are more than 100,000 immortal kings and a few million eternal god lords? Wang Xian asked in surprise. That's right, my friend. There's no name in the starry sky ahead because it's connected by several galaxies. If the boundless galaxy is placed here, it can only be said to be 1/100th of the size of a complete galaxy. And here, there are 7 galaxies, the Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said indifferently. So big? Doesn't that mean that even the eternal God would need 1 to 2 months to cross a galaxy? Wang Xian said in surprise. It would take 1 to 2 months to achieve teleportation in diameter. The eternal God wouldn't dare to teleport recklessly in this region. There are many dangerous and unknown places. There are some places that the Divine Emperor wouldn't dare to enter. There are also some places that even the immortal king would be afraid to enter. Let me put it this way. There is a huge planet in the galaxy that is as big as the entire boundless galaxy, the God Emperor of Tianqing said. A planet that is as big as the boundless galaxy? Wang Xian was extremely shocked. Wouldn't that mean that a city on this planet would take a god-level powerhouse 10 days to half a month to fly out of the city? This was simply terrifying. Humans are not the masters of the universe. At this moment, the God of Heaven's formation suddenly said another sentence. Humans are not the masters of the universe. Wang Xian agreed with this sentence. In comparison, in the entire universe, humans could only be considered as a race with a relatively large number. Among the myriad of races in the universe, humans could only be ranked in the top 20. If it wasn't for the fact that humans were good at learning and using weapons, humans wouldn't even be ranked in the top 20. It's the same in this bright land. The space beasts, demons, universe desolate beasts, and robots can all compete with humans. The Divine Emperor of Heaven Array continued his introduction. Robots? Wang Xian's eyes revealed a look of astonishment. That's right, they are robots. Robots created by humans. After they possess intelligence, they will form a brand new race of life. In this bright land, there is a race of robots. They are the masters and can fight against the God Emperor powerhouses. They are extremely powerful. Their learning ability is also very terrifying. All kinds of high-tech weapons can easily destroy planets. The God Emperor of Heaven's formation said slowly. Wang Xian was slightly moved when he heard his words. There is an energy storm ahead. Fly to the left immediately. Quick! The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation's reminder rang out. Wang Xian's body moved and he flew to the left immediately. Buzz! 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 After avoiding the terrifying energy storm, Wang Xian swept his gaze across and discovered that a star that was the size of the moon was instantly annihilated. All that was left was a speck of dust. Wang Xian's pupils constricted slightly. Under such circumstances, it was as though he had been staying in the beginner's village all this while. When he suddenly came to the main city, he was surrounded by peerless experts. This was too difficult. Tianqin, where are we going now? Wang Xian immediately asked him. It's only 100 years since my death. Let's go to a nearby planet. I'll find you a backer there. Although the other party only has the strength of an immortal king, it should be enough. Tianqin immediately replied. After we get out, I will use the formation to look for Qin Yu and Ling Xiu. Wang Xian frowned slightly. Suddenly, he saw a meteorite crashing towards him. His body moved and he quickly dodged to the side. Pun! The energy released by the meteorite was abnormally terrifying, causing Wang Xian's expression to change slightly. Pun! He stretched out his arm and turned it into a dragon claw that tore upwards. Boom! 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 The terrifying force caused him to retreat hundreds of thousands of meters. The clothes on his body were torn apart. Wang Xian moved his body and used energy to condense a set of clothes. He exhaled slightly. Be careful. This piece of energy is completely chaotic due to that huge battle. It will take at least 10 days for it to fly out of here. The God of Formation reminded him. Okay. Wang Xian nodded his head and braced himself. 13 days later, at the edge of the famous battlefield of the Emperor's destruction in the Tianhai Galaxy, an extremely pathetic figure flew out. His clothes were tattered, and there were a few scars on his arms. Even his face had 2 scars. His clothes were burned by the true Samadhi fire, and the scars on his face were caused by the 4 layers of sword laws. If it wasn't for the Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation commanding him, he might not have been able to fly out for more than 10 days. Phew, this place is really dangerous. Wang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. There are still many formations that I set up in this place that have yet to be activated. The Divine Emperor wouldn't dare to venture out recklessly. If you didn't know that your girlfriend is still alive, I would have thought that 99% of you had already perished. The God of Heaven's formation said. I want to search for the location of Qin Yu and the rest. Wang Xian did not hesitate at all. He immediately took out Qin Yu and Ling Xiu's hair and began to set up an array. Array formation, blood connection. Wang Xian immediately set up an array formation. However, what made his expression ugly was that the blood connection could not sense their location. If the blood connection cannot be sensed, there are only 2 possibilities. The distance is too far and your strength is too weak. It's better for you to improve your strength first. If you can reach the realm of the Void God Emperor, it won't be difficult to find 2 people. The Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation said to Wang Xian. And Wang Xian nodded his head with a bad expression. It had been more than 4 years and the entire resplendent land was so big. If he wanted to find it as soon as possible, he had to improve his strength as soon as possible. Do you think the backer you found for me is reliable? Wang Xian asked. Don't worry. I was just pointing at a little fellow in the past. Although his talent is a little lacking, there's no need to mention his character. I won't reveal any information about my existence for the time being. You just have to give him this piece of paper. A piece of paper floated in front of Wang Xian. Wang Xian reached out and took it. There were no words on the paper. Instead, there was a voice message that could be heard when he opened it. "Let's go. I'll guide you," the god of formation said. Wang Xian's body moved and he immediately flew forward. This was a vast void. He flew forward and soon, he saw many huge stars. Some stars were burning with huge flames. It was extremely terrifying. Some stars had a terrifying suction force that made people tremble. This is the bright land. Chapter 2235. 2235 2235 Xian Tianzi's Thoughts. The Tianhai Galaxy was one of the 7 galaxies in the resplendent land. The natural selection continent was an incomparably vast continent. This was not a planet, but a continent that was perfectly round. Wang Xian looked at the continent in front of him and felt extremely tiny. This kind of continent was similar to the continent plates in the boundless galaxy that had a circumference of tens of millions of kilometers. It was not enough for those continental plates. Compared to the one in front of him, it looked extremely tiny. Wang Xian could see the thickness of the continental plates. He did not know how many kilometers thick they were. Even with his current strength, he could not see the bottom at a glance. The entire continent was filled with the aura of desolation. However, the continent in front of him was filled with a sense of technology. Cars and airplanes shuttled between the ground and the air. It was filled with sci-fi. However, in this sci-fi, trees that were 10,000 meters tall rose up from the ground. Their branches and leaves were lush. There were some huge birds and beasts flying in the sky. It looked like it was filled with fantasy. This is the natural selection continent. It is a continent with no night. It has always been under the illumination of the sun. In the past, the development of technology was the main focus of the natural selection continent. After the development of technology reached a bottleneck, it entered an era of cultivation. Emperor Tiancheng's voice entered Wang Xian's mind. He was obviously very familiar with the planet in front of him. This continent is really strange. How high is the level of technology here? Wang Xian looked around with curiosity. It can eliminate existences at the level of the Eternal God Lord, but it is impossible to surpass the level of the Eternal God Lord. There are more than a dozen immortal godly monarchs on this continent. This place is completely different from the boundless galaxy. Be it technology, arrays, or cultivation, they have already formed a system. There are a few powerful organizations. From now on, it will be much more convenient for you to join these organizations. The Divine Emperor of Heaven Array introduced to him. Continue flying forward. Following that, he continued to give orders. Wang Xian nodded his head and flew straight towards the Tianzi continent. As soon as he reached the main road, Wang Xian sensed a feeling of being monitored. It's the Heaven's Eye, the most advanced technology in the Tianzi continent. By scanning with the Heaven's Eye, it can detect if you are a wanted criminal. The God of Heaven's formation transmitted his voice. Eh? Heaven's Eye? Wang Xian was slightly taken aback. He looked a little surprised. In the major planets of the 7 galaxies, most of the technology and formations are connected. Once some of the most vicious criminals are wanted, they can be found on other planets. Of course, there are also some planets that do not prohibit these people from entering. These planets often involve darkness. The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation introduced. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. He had a vague idea of this bright land. In the bright land, humans were not the dominant force. Therefore, humans were more united. The major planets were connected together like an internet. Any criminals who entered could be seen directly. This was very beneficial to a planet, a continent, and a faction. Normally, no one would reject it. Furthermore, humans are not the dominant force in this bright land. As humans are facing a threat, the major planets can teleport. Therefore, the security of the various places is better. Although this starry sky is still under the control of the major forces, there will basically be no indiscriminate killing of innocent people, even the disciples of the major forces. Wang Xian swept his gaze across the sky and continued to fly. The divine Emperor of Heaven's formation continued to explain to him. Why? Upon hearing his words, Wang Xian was slightly stunned. Because once the ruler of a force does things unfairly and oppresses others, it will result in the loss of population. In a place like this where one can teleport to a planet, when ordinary people see such a situation, they will choose to go somewhere else. The loss of population means the loss of the strong. It will be extremely difficult to fight against other powerful existences. As time goes on, they will either perish or dissipate. The celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation explained the rules of this resplendent place to Wang Xian. The strong could not kill the innocent, on the premise that the weak could not provoke them. The various major factions would not bully others based on their power. They would even do so in order to ensure the morale of the people in their respective regions. It would be fair and just. This was a pretty good environment for competition. Because humans are not the rulers of this region, the major factions do not dare to do as they please. This environment is pretty good, Wang Xian thought to himself. There was no control in the sky. The people flying around were very fast. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and realized that he could see the god-level powerhouses. Among the 1,000 people, there was probably one powerhouse who had ignited the divine fire. However, there were not many god-level powerhouses. Wang Xian had only seen one after flying for more than 2 hours. God-level powerhouses were very ordinary. A god-level powerhouse could be called a powerhouse. An immortal god-king could oversee a region and suppress a planet. The planet here was much bigger than the boundless galaxy. One planet was equivalent to 500 to 600 life planets in the boundless galaxy. The difference was huge. We are here, Xian Heaven Domain. After flying for more than 10 hours, the celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation's notification sounded. Wang Xian looked ahead. In the middle of a huge canyon, there was an entrance. The entrance was more than 100 kilometers wide, and there were people and cars coming in and out. In the sky above the canyon, there was a huge arched door with the words, Xiantian Territory, written on it. Go to the Xiantian Academy in the Xiantian Territory. The celestial Emperor of Formation instructed him directly. Wang Xian nodded and entered immediately. The entire Xian Heaven domain looked extremely vast. Waves of majestic energy came from within. In the surroundings, Wang Xian saw numerous gigantic divine trees. These divine trees possessed intelligence. Some of them even had the appearance of a human. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and was slightly shocked. Vast, vast. Compared to the boundless star field, there was a huge difference. Even the Dragon Palace was far from it. After flying for another 7 to 8 hours, Wang Xian saw an incomparably huge academy. Ancient buildings, vast ancient pagodas, and majestic energy. As well as those laws that made one's heart tremble. Non-Xiantian Academy disciples are prohibited from entering. When Wang Xian stepped into the entrance of Xiantian Academy, a middle-aged man at the guard's office stared at him and said indifferently, I'm here to look for Senior Xiantianzi. Wang Xian looked at the middle-aged man and said directly, Xiantian. The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. Then, his expression turned cold as he sized up the man from head to toe. It's not easy to meet our dean. It's also not easy to meet anyone. Let's go, he said directly. Meet their dean? Who was their dean? An undying god-king level existence, the strongest in the entire dark sky domain, one of the pinnacle experts of the Tianzhe continent. How could anyone meet him? Those who were qualified to meet their dean wouldn't do it this way. Chapter 2236. 2236. Xiantianzi was deep in thought. He was looking at the attire of the young man in front of him. There were 2 sword marks on his face and burn marks on his arms. Although his clothes were neat and tidy, he still looked a little embarrassed. This? Wang Xian was slightly stunned when he saw that he couldn't even enter the door. Heaven formation, what should we do now? We can't even enter the door. Wang Xian was a little speechless as he transmitted his voice to the god of sky array. Fortunately, the middle-aged man who was guarding the door had a better quality. He didn't look down on others and directly ordered him to scram. Of course, this action of the middle-aged man might also save Wang Xian from having to show off and slap his face. Throw away the spiritual paper. That kid will be here soon, the god of sky array said indifferently. As the god of void who had lived for tens of millions, he could still consider such a small matter. Wang Xian nodded his head. He took out the spiritual paper and threw it lightly in front of him. The spiritual paper flew directly into the mysterious Sky Academy. Oh? What are you doing? The middle-aged man's expression changed. He watched as the spiritual paper waved its arm and a wave of spiritual energy surged towards the spiritual paper. However, the spiritual paper trembled slightly and disappeared. Damn it! The middle-aged man's pupils contracted slightly. With a wave of his arm, a formation compass appeared in front of him instantly. The formation compass revolved, and with a wave of the middle-aged man's arm, a ring of fire trapped Wang Xian instantly. Huh! Wang Xian was slightly stunned as he looked at the ring of fire around him. Come in! The old man waved his arm and pulled him into a room at the side. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment, and didn't resist at all. Old Tang, what happened? What did you put the spiritual paper for? Tell me honestly. After entering the room, the middle-aged man stared at him coldly. A few guards at the side immediately looked at him in puzzlement. I'll inform Senior Tian Xuanzi. He will be here soon, Wang Xian said faintly. Inform our principal to come over? Kid, I think you have a screw loose. A middle-aged man raised his head slightly and sized up Wang Xian from head to toe. It'll only take a few minutes. I can't escape anyway. Wang Xian shrugged his shoulders and stood there without moving. His gaze swept across the few of them. Among the few godly state experts, one of them was an elder who had reached the realm of the eternal God Lord. One of them was guarding the entrance of the academy and was at the level of the eternal God Lord. This was rather unbelievable. Oh? When the people around saw Wang Xian's calm expression, they were slightly stunned. Lock him up here first, the old man who was at the level of the God Lord said faintly. There was some doubt in his eyes. Dean, this time around, more than 20 of our teachers and students have been completely annihilated. Those sea monsters in the underground sea are too cunning. Now that the new semester is starting, we will have to reassign some teachers. At this moment, at the top of a tall tower in Xiantian Academy, a few old men stood in front of a white-bearded old man and reported with a grim expression on their faces. The white-bearded old man frowned slightly. Wang! At this moment, a piece of spiritual paper suddenly appeared in front of him. The white-bearded old man was slightly stunned and full of astonishment. With a wave of his arm, the spiritual paper landed in his hand. Boom! In the next moment, the white-bearded old man suddenly stood up. His face was filled with excitement and shock. All of you retreat first! As soon as he finished speaking, his figure instantly disappeared. Oh? The few old men in the room were slightly stunned. They looked at each other and walked out with puzzlement. Buzz! At the same time, a figure appeared at the entrance guard of the Xiantian Academy. When Wang Xian saw the old man who suddenly appeared, his pupils constricted slightly. Very soon, he guessed the identity of the old man. Greetings to the dean! At the entrance guard, the few of them saw the appearance of the old man, and their faces were filled with shock. They immediately bowed respectfully. They glanced at Wang Xian who was beside them. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Senior Tian Xuanzi? Wang Xian looked at the old man and cupped his hands. Let's go, little brother. Let's go to my place. The white-bearded old man was Tian Xuanzi. With a wave of his arm, he enveloped Wang Xian. The two of them disappeared instantly. All that was left was the shocked expressions of the guards in the security room. That kid really knew their principal. In just a split second, Wang Xian sensed the drastic changes in the surroundings. He was already standing at the top of a mountain peak, surrounded by clouds. There were also mountain peaks around him. All of the mountain peaks contained majestic energy, as if they were forming a huge formation. The spiritual energy here was extremely dense, and was even higher than the Dragon Palace. Phew, little brother, I didn't expect you to be an old friend of Senior Celestial Arch of Heaven's formation. Since Senior Celestial Arch of Heaven's formation asked me to take care of you, you can live peacefully in my Xian Heaven domain in the future. Xian Tianzi's eyes flickered as he stared at Wang Xian. He took a deep breath. Thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi. Wang Xian was slightly silent. He nodded his head and thanked him. Don't worry. Although I don't know why Senior Tianchen handed you over to me, I owe you a debt of gratitude. This debt of gratitude is greater than the heavens. It's a pity that Senior Tianchen. Xian Tianzi shook his head slightly and looked towards the east. Forget it. It's better if you don't know some things. I will teach you well in the future and arrange a place for you to stay. Oh right, what kind of formations are you cultivating? Xian Tianzi hesitated for a moment and asked Wang Xian. Yes, it's related. Wang Xian nodded his head. What's your cultivation level now? Xian Tianzi looked at him and asked. I've just been able to establish laws, at the level of a god lord. Wang Xian replied. Oh? You've already been able to establish laws? A hint of shock flashed across Xian Tianzi's eyes. He sized up Wang Xian from head to toe and sensed his aura. Judging from his vitality, he's very young and belongs to the stage of youth. The way of formations in the youth stage has already reached the level of a god lord. It's unbelievable. Senior said that this is the son of his deceased friend. To be able to be related to Senior, his talent is absolutely terrifying. Also, before Senior died, he might have left behind his inheritance. Could it be? All of a sudden, a powerful luster shot out from his eyes, and his body trembled. Even if he didn't obtain the inheritance, and only obtained a tiny bit of it, it would still be a treasure that would drive all array formation masters crazy if placed outside. This youth definitely has boundless potential in the future. Xian Tianzi's thoughts were active. Little brother, are you willing to take me as your master? After hesitating for a moment, Xian Tianzi's eyes flickered as he looked at Wang Xian. I don't want to take anyone as my master. Wang Xian shook his head. He didn't even agree when the Celestial Emperor of Tiancheng wanted to take him as his disciple, let alone Xian Tianzi. Although Xian Tianzi's strength was extremely terrifying, he couldn't teach him anything. Xian Tianzi didn't seem to be too surprised by Wang Xian's response. Sigh, since that's the case, let's forget about it. Then, according to the instructions of the Divine Emperor of Heaven's formation, little brother, you will marry into our Xian Tian territory in the future. Don't worry, I will find you a girl that you are satisfied with. There are many goddesses in our Xian Tian territory. There will definitely be someone that you are satisfied with. I will watch you grow up, get married, and have children. I will not disappoint Senior Tiancheng God Emperor. He suddenly said slowly, his voice full of emotion. His words stunned Wang Xian. Chapter 2237 2237 2237 Xian Tianzi's thoughts. Marry into the family? When Wang Xian heard Xian Tianzi's words, he was stunned when he saw the old man staring at him with a glowing face. He was stunned. Tiancheng, you old man, you told him to let me marry into their Xian heaven domain? You told him to watch me get married and have children? Wang Xian's face turned dark as he transmitted his voice to Xian Tianzi. No, I told him to take care of you after you became an old friend of mine. The god of Tianchen was also a little stunned. Soon after, he became speechless. Maybe this kid sees that you have good talent and is related to me. That's why he wants to keep you in their mysterious sky territory. Yeah, I used to see this kid's honest face. I didn't expect him to be so cunning. Looks like he's getting smarter and smarter. However, my young friend, you have benefited from me this time. No matter what, this old fellow is still a godly king. Among his descendants, there will always be beautiful women. When that time comes, won't you be able to pick any beautiful women you want? The celestial emperor of heaven's formation said with a smile on his face. Fuck. Wang Xian was speechless. He turned around and looked at Xian Tianzi. Don't be in a hurry to reject him. You are now working for this old fellow. In the future you will have to let him take care of you. I haven't seen this old fellow for more than 10,000 years. It's not a big deal to betray yourself. The Tianqing God Emperor seemed to be very happy when he saw Wang Xian being defeated. He transmitted his voice to him. This, Senior Xian Tianzi, I am still young. Let's not talk about other things. Wang Xian replied to Xian Tianzi with a dark face. Haha, there's no hurry. Let's go. I will bring you to a place to stay, Xian Tianzi said as he waved his arm. The two of them instantly appeared on another mountain peak. This mountain peak was not too far away from the previous one. On top of the mountain peak, there was a string peak. The entire mountain peak contained a huge amount of spiritual energy. It was one of the better mountain peaks in the vicinity. Little brother, you can stay here. This is the mountain peak that belonged to a kid of mine back then. However, due to an accident. Oh, I forgot to ask little brother your name. The old man looked around with a nostalgic look. Then, he smiled and looked at Wang Xian. Wang Xian, Rinshan Xian. Wang Xian said to him. Your name is not bad. I'll call you Little Xian from now on. This will be your home from now on. If you need anything, just look for me. I'll get someone to take care of your daily life later. Also, it's very difficult to cultivate in the path of formations. If you need anything, you can look for me. I don't know what you lack either. I'll give you some resources. As Xian Tianzi spoke, he waved his arm. Numerous divine pills with law flowing on them floated around Wang Xian. There were dozens of eternal divine pills. Their level was around level 2 and level 3 of the eternal divine lord. They were also the most suitable for Wang Xian's current strength. Thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi. Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A trace of gratitude appeared on his face as he said solemnly, it's just some small elixirs. If you need them in the future, come and look for me directly. Xian Tianzi waved his hand and looked around. He continued, look around first. I'll get someone to call you later. We'll be nagging. All right, thank you, Senior Xian Tianzi. Wang Xian nodded his head in gratitude. Haha, no need to thank me. We'll be a family from now on, Xian Tianzi said cheerfully. He waved his hand and left immediately. Wang Xian's face turned black when he heard his words. FUCK, a family? What is this old man trying to do to me? However, this Xian Tianzi is indeed not bad, Wang Xian muttered as he looked at the eternal lord-level elixirs in front of him. If the people from the Xian heaven region knew that a powerful man could treat him in such a manner, they would be extremely envious. They would even feel that it was unbelievable. These dozens of elixirs should be able to ignite 1 or even 2 wisps of divine fire again. Wang Xian's heart was burning. Although that old fellow has some ulterior motives, it's still not bad. Back then, he knelt in front of my hall for 5 years and I didn't take him in as my disciple. Sigh. The voice of the God of Heaven's formation rang in Wang Xian's ears. Finally, he let out a sigh as he thought of his disciple who betrayed him back then. Wang Xian ignored the self-pity of the God of Heaven's formation. He floated at the top of the mountain peak and strolled around the entire mountain peak. This string peak was indeed extremely luxurious. There was also an eternal divine grass in the room on the mountain peak that was emitting divine light. Buzz. After scanning his surroundings, Wang Xian immediately stared at the elixir in front of him. With a wave of his arm, he swallowed it directly. Boom! 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 In an instant, waves of majestic energy transformed into the dragon qi in his body. Wang Xian had only ignited 6 wisps of divine fire. After consuming the elixir of the eternal divine lord level, the dragon qi that was converted from the 6 wisps of divine fire was extremely terrifying. The majestic energy of his energy surged as the aura on his body continued to rise. As he did not transform into the body of a divine dragon, the phantom image of a 7-colored divine dragon appeared around him. Ding! Congratulations to host for increasing your level. You have lit up 7 wisps of divine fire. Ding! Congratulations to host for increasing your level. You have lit up 8 wisps of divine fire. Name Wang Xian. Race, Yin-Yang 5 Elements Divine Dragon, Mandragon Unity. Level, 8 wisps of divine fire, 5th change of the divine dragon transformation. Divine Crystal, 17,735. 4 billion/1000 billion. Supernatural ability, ruling the water tribe below one's level. Devouring creatures to extract divine crystals. Control of the 5 elements. Cultivation method, divine dragon transformation. Supernatural ability, soul absorbing, spirit attaching, yin-yang 5 elements dragon eyes. Aspect, 5 elements great mill, dragon kingdom in the palm, dragon head under the heavens, dragon body of 10,000 miles, yin-yang poles, yin-yang 5 elements alms bowl, divine dragon tail swing. Divine kingdom, dragon palace. Dragon palace, level 6. Dragon palace members, 153633. Phew, 2 levels in a row. Wang Xian opened his eyes and revealed an excited expression. Indeed, it was different to have someone protecting him. With 8 wisps of divine fire, he was able to fight against or even kill the eternal God Lord who had comprehended 4 laws. This speed of improvement, is this the inheritance of the divine dragon? Is a peak existence that terrifying? The god of heaven's formation muttered as he sensed Wang Xian's improvement. His strength was already very strong. According to what he knew, there were only 2 realms above him. However, he was still a little shocked when faced with Wang Xian's rapid improvement. Buzz! Wang Xian waved his arm and set up a blood-linked formation. After failing to sense Qin Yu and Ling Xiu, he shook his head helplessly. With your improvement in strength this time, you should be able to master more formations. You can learn them in the next few days. The god of heaven's formation transmitted his voice to Wang Xian. All right. He nodded his head. Young Master Wang, our master is calling you over for a meal. At this moment, an old woman's voice came from outside. Wang Xian walked out and nodded his head. Young Master Wang, I will take care of your daily life in the future. If you have anything to tell me, you can tell me. The old lady said with a smile. All right, it will be troublesome in the future. Wang Xian nodded his head and walked towards the main peak under the guidance of the old lady. Chapter 2238. 2238 in the 2238 Greater World. My young friend Wang Xian, give this spiritual paper to that old fellow later. Don't say too much. Just tell him that it was given to him after he took you in. Following behind the old lady, the god of heaven's formation transmitted his voice to Wang Xian. A spiritual paper appeared in front of him. All right. Wang Xian nodded and didn't ask anything. Come, little Xian, have a seat. Upon entering the main peak where Xian Tianzi was, Wang Xian greeted him warmly when he saw him entering. Okay. Wang Xian nodded his head. Thank you for taking care of me, senior. Haha, I've already said that there's no need to be so polite. Xian Tianzi shook his head and gestured at Wang Xian. Wang Xian looked at the food on the table. All of them were valuable items, and the ingredients were at the godly state level. He smacked his lips and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Try it. I don't usually eat like this. Hee, give me a glass of wine. This is a 100,000-year-old wine. Xian Tianzi greeted him warmly. Wang Xian nodded and greeted him politely. Xian Tianzi didn't have any special purpose. He was just introducing some information about the mysterious sky territory to him. The mysterious sky territory was one of the 4 major forces in the Tianzi continent. It occupied 1/5 of the Tianzi continent. As for how big it was, Wang Xian did a rough calculation. It was equivalent to the area of 1,000 previous Earths. That's right, it was 1,000. That was how terrifying it was. A city in the mysterious sky territory was equivalent to the size of a few Earths. After 3 rounds of drinking, most of the time, Xiantianzi was the one talking. He was telling him how awesome the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation was back then. How did he obtain the guidance of the Tiancheng Celestial Emperor? However, it was obvious that Xiantianzi had concealed the fact that he had been rejected after kneeling for 5 years. Wang Xian realized that Xiantianzi was also a man of character. No wonder the Tiancheng Celestial Emperor said that he had a good temperament. Senior, I won't disturb you anymore. This is a piece of spiritual paper. The Tiancheng Celestial Emperor asked me to give it to you after you took me in. Before Wang Xian left, he took out the spiritual paper and placed it in front of Xiantianzi. Huh! Xiantianzi was slightly stunned. He pointed his finger at the spiritual paper, and his body began to tremble very quickly. Huff, huff, huff! Some of the core formations of the Celestial Emperor of Tiancheng, he growled in a low voice. His face was flushed red and his face was filled with excitement. Senior Celestial Emperor of Tiancheng only taught these core formations to his personal disciples. Although you have already fallen, if one day I, Xiantianzi, can step into the Celestial Emperor realm, I will definitely avenge you. It's just that I might not be as talented as you. Xiantianzi mumbled and clenched his fists tightly. In the next few days, I will first master the Tao of formations. Then I will think of a way to earn resources and increase my strength. Wang Xian returned to the Flux Disciple Peak and thought to himself. Sky formation, hand over the formations that I can master now. As Wang Xian spoke, he said to the god of sky formation. Didn't you hear that old fellow say that I'm so awesome just now? I didn't take him in even after kneeling for 10 years. Look at you now. I almost became your nanny. The god of sky formation said with a rare indignant tone. All right. Recognize yourself. You're already dead. Wang Xian smiled. When my strength reaches the level of Celestial Darch, I will give you a body. Huff! Huff! The Celestial Darch of Heaven's formation took a deep breath and began to teach Wang Xian obediently. Now, he was counting on Wang Xian. In the next 10 days, Wang Xian did not leave the Flux Disciple Peak. He had been cultivating all kinds of formations. In the next 10 days, Wang Xian had mastered more than 20 formations. Some of them were auxiliary formations while the rest were offensive formations. What a monster! Seeing that Wang Xian had mastered a formation that was comparable to a level 3 Divine Lord, the God of Heaven's formation muttered to himself. Back then, which formation didn't take him hundreds of years to master? It wasn't as easy as him. However, the God of Heaven's formation knew that this was mainly due to Wang Xian's mastery of 7 attributes and his own strength. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to master them so quickly. 7 attributes, and the origin of attributes. This was no joke. It's not bad. Although it's a little useless, it's good that we don't waste too much time. Wang Xian stretched his body and said indifferently. Xiantianzi will beat you to death when he hears your words. The Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation said indifferently. Next, we have to consider the matter of obtaining resources. Do you know how to obtain resources quickly? Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling as he asked the God of Heaven's formation. Oh, I have been the God of Void for more than 50 million years. I don't know about these things. The God of Heaven's formation shook his head. Wang Xian was speechless. However, it made sense when he thought about it. How would an existence at the level of the God of Void know how to obtain resources faster? Go and ask that old fellow. He is the dean of the Xiantian Academy, so he should know more about it. The God Emperor of Heaven's formation suggested to him. All right. Wang Xian nodded. He immediately took out his communication device and sent a message to Xiantianzi. Soon, Xiantianzi replied. Wang Xian stopped him from coming over to pick him up and flew directly in the direction of the Xiantian Academy. There was a formation protecting the mountain peak. However, Wang Xian had Xiantianzi's keepsake on him, so he was not affected by the formation. While flying in the air, Wang Xian could feel the vast aura around him. This aura was similar to the prehistoric world in the Legends of Earth, as well as the world in sci-fi movies. Cars, spaceships, and airplanes shuttled through the prehistoric world. Wang Xian actually saw entertainment venues such as bars, strange mountains and rivers, wild sci-fi. There seemed to be a lot more people. When Wang Xian arrived at the towering and eye-catching Xiantian Academy, he saw that there were a lot more people at the entrance of the academy compared to the last time. Most of them were young men and women with prominent figures. School has started? Wang Xian was puzzled and walked into the academy. Beep beep, non-students are not allowed to enter. This time, a voice rang out as soon as Wang Xian entered. At the guard's office, someone immediately stared at him. Some of the students also looked over curiously. It's that young man. A middle-aged guard's expression changed slightly when he saw Wang Xian. He quickly went forward to welcome him. Young master, what are you doing? This person in front of them was personally welcomed by the dean, who was so elusive that they couldn't even see his face. Go and look for Senior Xian Tianzi, Wang Xian said with a smile. Come. The Xiantian Academy is very big. Young master, I will bring you there, the middle-aged man said to him respectfully with a face full of respect. All right, sorry for the trouble. No trouble. The middle-aged man, who had a cold expression the last time, brought Wang Xian into the academy respectfully this time. The entire academy was indeed huge. They flew at full speed for an hour before they arrived at the tower where the central principal was. The entire academy had also opened Wang Xian's eyes. It was too vast and majestic. Chapter 2239. 2239 in the 2239 universe. This is where the principal works. However, I don't know if the principal is inside. Sometimes the principal will not come to the academy for hundreds of years. After the middle-aged guard brought Wang Xian over, he said to him, Thank you. Wang Xian nodded his head. He looked at the entrance and walked straight ahead. The simple and unadorned tower occupied an area of 5,000 to 6,000 square meters and was tens of thousands of meters tall. The entire tower was enveloped by a powerful array formation and was emitting a powerful pressure. The vast aura that came at him made Wang Xian's heart skip a beat. When he had just stepped into the bottom of the tower, Xian Tianzi, who was at the top, sensed Wang Xian's arrival. He waved his arm gently. Buzz. Wang Xian, who had just entered the entrance, instantly sensed that he had appeared in an ancient and luxurious room. Senior Xian Tianzi! Wang Xian shouted at Xian Tianzi. He had a better understanding of the immortal godly king's strength. Take a seat. What's the matter, little Xian? Xian Tianzi asked with a smile. Senior Xian Tianzi, I would like to ask, is there any way to obtain resources quickly? Wang Xian asked directly. Resources? What resources? Weapons? Elixirs? Xian Tianzi was slightly taken aback. If you need anything, I'll give it to you. No need, senior. I can't just ask you for all the resources. Wang Xian shook his head and thanked him. What does it matter? We're family. Xian Tianzi laughed nonchalantly. Wang Xian shook his head speechlessly. Senior, I might need a lot of resources. I also need to know how to earn resources quickly. To earn all kinds of resources, you need to take risks. You have just reached the Divine Lord realm and you are still too weak. I am worried. How about this? Xiao Xian, you are also at the Divine Lord realm. You have come to Xiantian Academy to teach your students. The treatment given to the teachers in the academy is not bad. If you can teach some outstanding disciples, there will be many rewards. Xian Tianzi said to Wang Xian. Wang Xian was a little speechless when he heard what Xian Tianzi said. Be a teacher? Senior, I have never been a teacher before. I want to get some resources quickly. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous, Wang Xian said in a speechless manner. No, no, you are still young. Although your strength and talent are not bad, you can't take risks rashly. Tell me what resources you need. Moreover, the teachers of the Mysterious Sky Academy are also very free. They can only attend 7 or 8 classes a month at most. Some students need to pay credits to listen to your lectures. The teachers can exchange their credits for treasures in the academy. Of course, if you feel that a disciple is not bad, you can specially teach him. The teachers with excellent results will also be rewarded. It doesn't matter if you don't have experience. The strength of a God Lord is enough to teach some students who have ignited the divine fire. Xian Tianzi immediately retorted and started to introduce the tasks of the teachers in the academy to him. Wang Xian was speechless. From the look of him, it was obvious that he didn't want him to take the risk. A hesitant look appeared on his face as he was thinking about how to convince this old fellow. Not long ago, more than a dozen teachers from our academy led the students into the underground sea and all of them perished. Currently, there are no teachers in the academy. Xiao Xian, please help me, this old man, to teach some new students. Xian Tianzi, who had lived for millions of years, could tell that Wang Xian was unwilling at first glance. He immediately said that. Oh? The underground sea? Died? Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. The underground sea is the underground world of the Tianzi continent. Although the natural selection continent is a continental plate, its thickness can reach up to hundreds of millions of kilometers. Other than the surface of the sea, there is also the underground sea. The subterranean sea is occupied by sea monsters. These sea monsters are extremely powerful. There are even existences at the Immortal King level. In addition, becoming a student of the Xian Tian Academy is not just about cultivating in seclusion. Entering the greater world to gain experience is also the most important thing. Xian Tianzi introduced to him. Subterranean sea. Greater world? Wang Xian's face was filled with doubt once again as he mumbled. Senior, what is the greater world? He could not help but ask. The 7 galaxies are vast and endless. There are billions of planets. Although the major forces are divided, humans are not the rulers of this place. Sometimes, they will encounter attacks from desolate beasts, demons, and monsters. Some planets and some forces cannot withstand the attacks, or they can avoid the loss of a large number of people. They will issue missions and other major forces on other planets will be able to see it. If anyone wants to obtain the rewards of these missions, they can accept the missions and carry out planet teleportation. Other than that, there is also the alternate dimension created by the Godly King, collectively known as the Greater World Mission. Xian Tianzi introduced it to Wang Xian. Can the Xian Tian Academy accept the Greater World Mission? A glint flashed across Wang Xian's eyes as he asked immediately. Yes, but Xiao Xian, don't have such thoughts. Come and be a teacher in the academy. Xian Tianzi said to him immediately. How many classes do you have in a month as a teacher? Do you have a high degree of freedom? I want to cultivate too. Wang Xian hesitated for a moment before asking. One class lasts for 2 hours. There are at least 6 classes in a month. There are about 30 students with you. They are all students who have ignited the divine fire. You will be teaching the formation from a wisp of divine fire to its peak. There will be 2 formations in each stage. One will be for combat, and the other will be for support. If the students wish to learn more formations, you will have to take them in as your disciples and exchange them with your points in the academy. As for the teachers, if you are not prepared to take the students in person, you will have a high degree of freedom. You will basically be able to stay in the academy for 3 to 4 days a month. Xian Tianzi spoke. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head. Since Xian Tianzi had spoken, he couldn't reject him. Furthermore, after agreeing to him, he could use his identity as a teacher of the academy to take a look at the greater world and the sea monster. Haha, all right. It seems like it's only a few days since the freshmen are reporting. I will get someone to bring you there. Xian Tianzi stood up happily and looked down as though he was transmitting his voice. Principal. Soon, a woman dressed in battle armor walked in. The golden battle armor wrapped around her body, making her look like a violent god of war. The woman bowed respectfully to Xian Tianzi. This is Wang Xian. Arrange a place for him to be the teacher of this batch of freshmen. Also, give him a place to stay in the forest. Xian Tianzi spoke expressionlessly with a dignified expression when he faced his subordinates. It's the principal. The woman was shocked. She looked at Wang Xian with a shocked expression. She felt extremely shocked when she sensed Wang Xian's aura at such a young age. For an expert to be able to sense the age of a person from his aura, it might not be too much of a preparation. However, it was enough to determine the youth and the young man. Some experts who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years could sense the aura of time and desolation from their bodies at a glance. Chapter 2240. 2240 Teacher Wang. Teacher Wang Xian, the new students have just registered not long ago. There are no teachers to teach them for the time being. However, the official selection of the students will begin tomorrow morning. I'll bring you to the back forest first. The back forest is a place that the academy has prepared for some of the powerhouses in the academy. In the future, Teacher Wang Xian can temporarily stay there. The woman who followed Director Jean came down from the principal's tower and said to Wang Xian, Yes, thank you, Director Jean. This is my first day at the Xiantian Academy. I don't know much about this place, and I don't know much about some of the teaching. Wang Xian thanked Director Jean. It's all right. Since the principal wants you to be an array teacher, you must be strong enough. Since Teacher Wang Xian is so young, he must be a genius. I'll bring you around the academy later. If you need anything, you can come to me directly. Director Jin's attitude towards Wang Xian was very good. After all, Wang Xian was brought here personally by the dean. His relationship with the dean was obviously not simple. As the ruler of the Xian Heaven domain, the dean was one of the top experts in the entire Tianzi continent. Even if she wanted to meet the dean once, it would take her at least a few hundred years. If it wasn't for the recent major incident that happened in the mysterious Sky Academy, the dean wouldn't have come. Dean Jean brought him around the academy. The entire academy was huge, covering an area of at least 10,000 kilometers. There were hundreds of thousands of students in the academy. They were the most outstanding talents in the entire mysterious Sky territory. The entire academy even included a rather large mountain range. It was extremely vast. This is the back forest. Teacher Wang Xian, you can stay here. Of course, you can also stay in other places. It's just a little more convenient here. Director Jean brought him to a small forest filled with bamboo. A stream flowed through the bamboo forest. Beside the stream, there were many simple and natural houses. Beside each house, there was a bamboo at the level of a deity. Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and was slightly surprised. There were at least hundreds of thousands of bamboos in the entire bamboo forest. The lowest level of these bamboos were at the demigod level. There were even quite a number of divine-level bamboos. The greater world is a dazzling place. Wang Xian could not help but sigh in his heart. Teacher Wang Xian, you can go to the place I brought you to tomorrow morning. I will introduce you to the other teachers then. Director Jean said to him. Wang Xian nodded his head and left after exchanging a few words with him. He entered the courtyard and swept his gaze across the surroundings. A satisfied look appeared on his face. Although it was not as good as the Flux Point Peak, it was still a pretty good place to live. As for the amount of spiritual energy, Wang Xian did not care much about it. To him, if he wanted to improve quickly, devouring resources was the fastest way. Wang Xian took out some books that he had bought along the way about the mysterious Sky Territory and the mysterious Sky Academy, and started to read them carefully. There were no days and nights in the Tianzi continent. However, they were still divided into days and nights according to time. After one night, Wang Xian walked towards a square that Director Jean had brought him to yesterday. When he arrived, he realized that there were already many people in the square. There were more than 10,000 young men and women standing in the middle of the square. At the front of the square stood more than 300 middle-aged and elderly people. One could sense from their aura that they were all God-level existences. Director Jean stood proudly in the middle of the square. This student, go and stand below immediately. When Wang Xian walked onto the stage, a middle-aged man at the edge of the square looked at him and shouted softly, "I'm the new teacher." Wang Xian was slightly taken aback as he said with a smile, "Oh?" The middle-aged teacher was slightly taken aback. "Teacher Wang Xian, come over!" At this moment, Director Jean, who was seated in the middle, saw Wang Xian. A smile appeared on his cold and dignified face. "Huh!" When the teachers saw this scene, they were filled with astonishment. They looked at Wang Xian in unison. Many of them were filled with astonishment. "This is also a teacher. He's so young?" The group of teachers were extremely puzzled. They were all array teachers. Now that they had all reached the stage of establishing laws, they were on par with the Eternal Lord. Wang Xian was dressed in black and there was a 7-colored divine dragon embroidered on his clothes. He looked rather domineering. However, with his young and tender face and aura, he could tell that this was a young man. He might be even younger than all the students present. Could he be a teacher? "Yes, Director Jean." Wang Xian nodded and walked towards Director Jean. The teachers around him were looking at him in astonishment. Wang Xian nodded at them kindly and walked to the side of Director Jean. "Teacher Wang Xian, this is the list of the freshmen this year. The 500 to 600 students at the front are the more outstanding students this year. Under normal circumstances, each teacher can choose 2 more outstanding students. The rest will be chosen according to the order. However, Teacher Wang Xian can choose his own students as he pleases. He can choose whichever student he likes." Director Jean said to Wang Xian. Wang Xian was slightly taken aback when he heard her words. All the teachers around him widened their eyes and looked over immediately. "Director Jean, how can this be?" An elder beside him frowned and said discontentedly. However, before he could finish his sentence, Director Jean raised her arm and signaled him to shut up. The old man was stunned. He was the descendant of the immortal godly king of the Xian heaven domain after all. Although there were more than 10 generations between him and Xian Tianzi, he was still a direct descendant. He did not expect Director Jean to interrupt him directly. Usually, Director Jean would give him face. However, he was not stupid. When he saw that his words were interrupted, he looked at Wang Xian with a twinkle in his eyes. "This is not good. I think it's better to proceed like the other teachers." Wang Xian knew that Dean Jean had opened the back door for him. He said in a slightly speechless manner, "It's all right. You are a new teacher and you are the oldest. I should take care of you," Dean Jean said nonchalantly. Some of the teachers around were slightly dazed. This kind of thing had never happened in the Xian Tian Academy. Sometimes, in order to compete for an elite disciple, even the descendants of Xian Tianzi would be embarrassed. Now, this young man was actually allowed to choose his students. Damn it, if he were to choose 30 out of the 500 to 600 outstanding disciples, the academy would be at a huge disadvantage in the future. This? Wang Xian nodded his head helplessly. The students below also saw Wang Xian on the stage and heard the words of the teachers. This made many students dumbfounded. He is also a teacher. He is too young. Damn, he can choose his students directly. Wow, this is a teacher. The teacher of our Xiantian Academy requires the strength of the eternal God Lord. Could it be that he can establish laws? This is too young and too handsome. My God, he is actually our teacher. Chapter 2241. 2241 Under Teacher 1 2241. In front of the Xiantian Academy's freshman square, more than 10,000 students were sizing up Wang Xian, who was standing in front of them. He was young, handsome, and had an extraordinary temperament. This made the eyes of many girls present shine. However, there were also many students who were filled with curiosity and doubt. Wang Xian was too young, and he didn't look older than them. At such an age, he was qualified to be their teacher. One must know that they were considered geniuses in the entire mysterious sky territory. There are 30 students in a class. Student Wang Xian can choose any 30 of them. He can choose the more outstanding students. Director Jean said directly to Wang Xian. The corners of the teachers' mouths twitched. Their faces didn't look good. Was this kid a relative of Director Jean? It shouldn't be. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Wang Xian shook his head and looked ahead. My name is Wang Xian, one of the new teachers. If you are willing to be my student, please come forward, he said to all the students. Huh! Dean Jean and the teachers around him were slightly stunned when they saw his actions. They smiled faintly and didn't say anything. The more than 10,000 students below looked hesitant when they saw Wang Xian standing out. He's so young. Isn't he a little unreliable? Yeah, he said that he's a new teacher. He's definitely not as good as the previous teachers. He's too young. His actual combat experience is definitely not strong. Some of the boys mumbled softly. I'm willing. Teacher Wang Xian is simply too handsome. I'm also willing to become teacher's student. To be able to become a teacher of the Xiantian Academy at such a young age is definitely the pride of the heavens. Even in the greater world, he would be the pride of the heavens. Some of the girls' eyes lit up as they spoke loudly and walked out. There were also some girls who thought that Wang Xian must be extraordinary to be able to become a teacher at such a young age. Hence, they walked out as well. In an instant, 50 to 60 girls walked out. Among them, there were quite a few who looked stunning. The girls were different from the boys. It was uncomfortable for the boys to find a teacher who was younger than them. However, the girls found it very interesting. There was no room for 2 tigers on a mountain, unless it was a male and a female. Such a situation was very suitable here. When Wang Xian saw that the 40 to 50 people were all girls, the corner of his mouth twitched. The female students are pretty good. They are all more obedient. Among them, 3 of the girls are more talented. Director Jean, who was standing at the side, said with a smile on his face. I will choose 30 of you. Wang Xian looked at the 40 to 50 girls and shook his head. Then, he waved his arm. In an instant, illusory pillars appeared around the group of girls. With a wave of his arm, 30 of them instantly appeared around 500 meters away. Water element formation, teleportation. Only an array master who had ignited 8 wisps of divine fire could achieve such a feat. On the other hand, Wang Xian's formation covered 40 to 50 people, but he had managed to accurately teleport 30 of them out. One could see how skilled he was in the art of formations. Teacher Wang Xian is really fast in setting up the formation. To be able to reach the level of a god lord at such a young age, he's really amazing. The old man who had spoken earlier said with a smile. Wang Xian smiled at him. To be able to cast an 8-wisp divine fire level formation in an instant, it seems like our teacher is really amazing. Wow, I'm starting to regret it. This teacher Wang Xian is not weak. Most importantly, the entire class is filled with girls. If I were to enter this class. The girls who were chosen were all excited when they saw Wang Xian's move. Some of the boys were also starting to regret it. The quality of these 30 girls was rather high. Alright, let's start distributing the students. After Wang Xian had chosen his students, the other teachers began to choose their own students as well. Soon, about 10,000 students were taken away by more than 300 teachers. These were not all the freshmen of this batch of Xiantian Academy. They were only freshmen in the field of formations. There were about 40,000 to 50,000 freshmen in each batch. Among them, there were about 10,000 students who practiced formations. The rest were ordinary cultivators. Xiantian Academy would recruit students every 10 years. There were about 40,000 to 50,000 students in each batch. There were a total of 30 batches of students. There were at least hundreds of thousands of students who died halfway through. There were about 800,000 to 900,000 students in the academy all year round. There were also some who went to the greater world to do missions. Wan Xian's classroom was located in a huge manor in the academy. There were places for students to stay in the manor as well. Each class occupied an area of a few kilometers. Wan Xian brought them to the luxurious training grounds and swept his gaze across the 30 girls. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Wan Xian. I will be your teacher in the future. If you have any questions in the future, you can come to me. In the first 3 days of every month, I will stay here to teach you. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I might not come over at other times. Now you guys can introduce yourselves. Let's start with you. If you have any other questions, you can ask them directly. Wan Xian stood in front of the group of students and said calmly, All right, teacher. My name is Huang Jujia. Now I have lit 2 wisps of divine fire. Hello, teacher. My name is... One by one, the girls started to introduce themselves. Wan Xian remembered their names. Is there a problem? After the girls finished introducing themselves, Wan Xian asked indifferently, Teacher, how old are you this year? One of the girls rolled her eyes and suddenly asked, Let's not talk about this anymore. It would be a blow to all of you. Wan Xian shook his head. The girl who asked the question was a little disappointed. Teacher, do you have a girlfriend? A girl asked with a face full of anticipation. Yes. Wan Xian answered directly. Some of the girls were embarrassed. All right, I think you guys should stop asking. I'm going to teach you guys about formations now. Among you guys, Huang Jiajia, Situyen lit up 2 wisps of divine fire, Heavenly Oxygen lit up 3 wisps of divine fire, and the rest of you lit up 1 wisp of divine fire. Let me see the formations that the 3 of you girls have mastered. The rest of the girls who have mastered formations, let me see as well. The Academy stipulates that each level will teach 1 attack and 1 auxiliary formation. If you guys want to cultivate more formations, you can exchange them with your points. Wan Xian continued speaking to them. Teacher, do you accept disciples? What do you think of me? Huang Jiajia looked at him expectantly and said, The teachers of the Xiantian Academy would accept some of the more talented students as their disciples. They would impart some formations to them for free so that they could receive more guidance. Many students hope that their teachers would take them in as their disciples, especially those without any background. I won't take them in for the time being. If any of the students have made greater progress, I will impart formations to all of you for free. Wan Xian said directly. Oh. Huang Jiajia nodded her head slightly. The rest of the female students also nodded their heads slightly. Their faces also became serious. They were here to cultivate, not for fun. Naturally, their main focus was on cultivation. Although Wan Xian was here to pass the time and did not want to reject Xiantianzi, he would not let his students down either. Chapter 2242 2242 2242 Underground Sea Monster. Although Wan Xian had never been a teacher, he had the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation behind him. Back then, the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation had taught him how to teach his students. The learning of formations was extremely difficult. It was much more difficult than ordinary cultivation. The most famous thing in Xiantian Academy was formations. The power of formations was very strong. If a formation master with a wisp of divine fire was given enough time and sufficient treasures, the formation he set up could kill hundreds of people of the same level. This was like a trap. It could even kill 2 or 3 wisps of divine fire. The prerequisite was that the other party didn't know that there was a formation here. Huang Jiajia and Situyen had already lit up 2 wisps of divine fire and 3 wisps of divine fire with heavenly oxygen. They were considered outstanding in this batch and their backgrounds were pretty good too. The 3 of them had mastered quite a number of formations. Wan Xian didn't have any comments when he saw how many formations they had cast. The rest of the female students had yet to come into contact with God-level formations. Before I teach you formations, I want to tell you a few rules. You are my students. Fighting and scheming are prohibited among you. If you are found out, you will be expelled or killed immediately. As my students, I don't expect you to be kind to others. However, don't cross the bottom line. Just maintain your true self. When facing others, you are not allowed to bully the weak. However, if someone bullies you, stick together and look for me if you can't defeat them," Wang Xian said to them calmly. His body exuded the aura of a strong person. At this moment, the aura on Wang Xian's body underwent an earth-shattering change. He had been smiling earlier, but now, he looked down on them like a high and mighty king. When the 30 girls saw the change in Wang Xian's temperament, their expressions changed drastically. They were all shocked and terrified. "All right, I will teach you the first attack formation, the ice formation. You 3 girls, I will teach you 2 wisps of divine fire and 3 wisps of divine fire respectively." Wang Xian retracted his aura and waved his arm. The formation in front of him appeared. The formation was formed bit by bit. The formation of 1 wisp of divine fire involved millions of steps. Each step had to be done accurately. Otherwise, the formation would collapse instantly. Even for a godly state expert who had a photographic memory and could see 10 lines at a glance, it was still very difficult to use the spiritual energy to guide the energy in the surroundings. The slightest mistake would result in failure. The group of girls put away all their thoughts and listened with some respect. "Next, let's start practicing. I will set up a few areas. The concentration of the spiritual energy and various attributes in the areas will be different. This way, we can choose according to the conditions." Wang Xian spoke to them as he took out a simple array compass and set up a few arrays here. With the assistance of arrays, the speed of the cultivation of arrays would be much faster. "Teacher, you actually know so many auxiliary arrays." When the group of girls saw that Wang Xian had set up more than a dozen auxiliary arrays, they were shocked. According to what they knew, an Eternal Lord-level array formation could control at most 100 arrays. There were many differences between array masters and array masters. Some were good at attacking arrays, some were good at defending arrays, and some were good at supporting arrays. Of course, there were also formation masters who were more balanced. However, it was already very strong for an Eternal Lord to be able to control more than 100 formations. However, Wang Xian casually set up more than a dozen supporting formations, and it was the kind of formations that merely supported the formation master's cultivation. There were very few such formations. As far as they knew, there were no such formations in the Xiantian Academy. Only the Spell Formation Guild had such a rare formation that could help spell formation masters to cultivate. "Is it too much?" Wang Xian shook his head. "All right, you guys can continue to cultivate here. I will stay here for 3 days every month and explain any problems to you within 3 days." There were more than 2,000 formations under his control now. All of them were accumulated by the Celestial Emperor of Heaven's formation. It wasn't difficult to cultivate this kind of auxiliary formation. The group of girls felt a chill in their hearts. Tianxiu, Huang Jiajia, and Situyan's eyes sparkled as they scanned the formations one by one excitedly. They had some background in their family. It was also because of this that they knew how terrifying this auxiliary formation was. It was as if the entire Xiantian Academy did not know about it. For a moment, Wang Xian made many of the girls look mysterious. After explaining the first formation to them, Wang Xian taught Huang Jiajia, Situ, and Yan Tianxin, the 3 girls, a formation that was of a higher level. After teaching them, Wang Xian sat there leisurely and watched the girls cultivate one by one. The cultivation of the formation required him to train non-stop. The improvement of his strength required the girls to cultivate. The teachers in the academy were basically very idle. After watching them train for 3 days and 3 nights, Wang Xian clapped his hands and called them over. When a godly state expert trained, it was fine to not sleep or rest for a year. "Teacher Wang, what's the matter?" A group of girls walked over with some attentiveness, and their eyes were sparkling. Wang Xian was in a good mood as he looked at the group of pretty girls. There were 40 to 50 girls. Wang Xian had chosen them based on their looks out of selfishness. All of them were pretty good looking. At the very least, they were pleasing to the eye. I will stay here for 3 days every month. I have something to ask you, Wang Xian said to them. Teacher Wang, please ask. We will tell you everything we know. The group of girls answered immediately. Do you know much about the underground sea? And the greater world? Wang Xian asked with a twinkle in his eyes. The underground sea? The greater world? The group of girls were stunned. Teacher Wang, I live by the sea. I am more familiar with the underground sea. At this moment, a girl who looked a little weak opened her mouth and said, Oh? You Bing Bing, tell me. Wang Xian looked at the girl and asked immediately. He had a deep impression of this girl because she was a Murloc, a human who was born from the strong humans and the aquatic race. Our natural selection sea is connected to the underground sea. The Tianzi Sea covers 1/6 of the entire Tianzi continent, but the underground sea is as big as our Tianzi continent. There are all kinds of powerful sea monsters living in the Tianzi Sea. It seems that our Xiantian Academy has many missions related to the underground sea. The northern edge of our Xiantian Academy is the sea. It suppresses the sea monsters to prevent them from causing trouble. The mission pavilion of Xiantian Academy has more detailed information. Many of our students need to go to the sea or the underground sea to increase their strength and earn resources quickly. Yu Bingbing introduced. As for the greater world, there are also missions in our Xiantian Academy. From our academy, we can enter millions of planets. Don't you know about this, teacher? Yu Bingbing added. This, I haven't been in the Tianzi continent for long. I'm not familiar with it. Wang Xian shook his head embarrassedly and looked towards the north. Alright, you guys cultivate first. I'll see you in a month. Chapter 2243 2243 2243 in the Underground Sea, Among the Sea Monsters. Our teacher Wang is so handsome and powerful. It would be great if I could become your teacher's wife. Don't even think about it. Why don't you see what kind of strength our teacher has and what kind of strength you have? Hey, don't you feel that our teacher is so mysterious? The aura he gives off is so powerful and majestic. We have really chosen the right teacher. That's right, especially the formation set up by our teacher. I've never heard of it before. It's easier to analyze the formation than to analyze it. The speed of his cultivation is more than 10 times faster than before. As they watched Wang Xian leave, the group of girls looked at his disappearing figure and started to chatter among themselves. They were still in their teenage years. Naturally, they couldn't help but have some fantasies when they met such an outstanding teacher. Even Huang Jiajia and the rest had sparkling eyes. After witnessing such an outstanding existence, how could they be interested in other men? Mission Pavilion! Wang Xian came to a mission pavilion in the Xiantian Academy. The entire mission pavilion was huge, but there were not many people inside. Wang Xian went in and scanned the place. Other than the students who had submitted their missions, there was no one else. One could receive missions directly from the communication stone plate issued by the Academy. They only needed to come here when they handed in their missions. The entire mission pavilion was solemn. Wang Xian walked up and bought a computer. As a world where technology and cultivation coexisted, the technological level of the Tianzi continent was very high. A computer was much more useful than a communication stone plate. As a teacher, Wang Xian processed one and pressed the computer. Immediately, information was reflected in front of him. This is really high-tech. Wang Xian looked at the lifelike scene in front of him and smiled. Leisure and entertainment, news from the Tianzi continent, the deeds of the Xiantian Academy, missions from the underground sea, and the greater world. There were all sorts of functions, and the functions were even more abundant than the computers in the past. Wang Xian casually clicked on them. He actually saw a concert and a live broadcast in the leisure and entertainment aspect. This broadened his horizons. The content of the live broadcasts was very clear. Most of the live broadcasts were about adventures, battles, and entertainment. The news on the natural selection continent was also all kinds of information. There were information about the deaths of teachers and students in the mysterious sky domain, as well as information about the strong ones. Wang Xian clicked on the missions in the underground sea. He searched for the bones of various sea monsters, the ambergris of the dragon whale, and the missions to protect a certain place. There were all sorts of missions. There were more than 1,000 of them. As long as you had the ability, you could accept the missions. The rewards of the missions are not bad. Some of them can be exchanged for elixirs of the level of the Eternal Lord. However, they are useless to me. The sea monsters can increase their dragon energy by devouring them. Some of the divine herbs and divine trees can also increase their strength. Most of the missions are useless to them. Wang Xian took a look at the missions above and opened the information and strategies on the ocean of natural selection and the underground sea. This underground sea can help me level up quickly. Wang Xian's eyes were sparkling. With a move of his body, he immediately flew towards the north of the academy in the underground sea. Walala! Wang Xian flew for an hour before he arrived at the north of the academy. What is this? There was a huge platform in the north. It was a platform made of steel. Silver-white steel covered the surroundings of the ocean. The length of the platform was so long that one could not see the end of it. In front of the ocean that was made of steel, there were huge cannon barrels. The dark cannon barrels were emitting a terrifying energy. This was an energy cannon that was used to guard the coast and prevent the sea monsters from attacking. Such an energy cannon could be killed by even the eternal God Lord. In the surrounding area, there were some students and teachers flying in and out of the sea. The underground sea was the natural enemy of the entire Tianzi continent. From time to time, there would be sea monsters flying out of the underground sea to launch devastating attacks on the human cities. As the sea monsters were underground, there were even immortal God King level sea monsters. The experts on the human side could not wipe them out. The humans of the Tianzi continent had been fighting against the sea monsters for countless of years. Standing on the silver-white platform in front of him, Wang Xian looked at the deep and dark ocean in front of him. In the sky, there was a dark blue sky. Standing here, one could feel one's insignificance. One could also feel a sense of heroism. Ocean! Wang Xian's eyes slowly revealed a burning look. With a move of his body, he flew straight into the ocean. Splash! He felt exhilarated as he entered the bottom of the ocean. The ocean in the boundless galaxy could not be compared to the ocean here. The ocean here was the real ocean. Roar! Wang Xian let out a low roar and stared straight ahead. This time, entering the ocean gave him the same feeling as when he had just obtained the Divine Dragon system and stepped into the ocean. The dragon eyes of the yin-yang and 5 elements swept across the surroundings. There were many creatures on the seabed. Some ordinary fishes had the strength of transcendence and void interpretation. Buzz! Rule! Wang Xian shouted softly. In an instant, all the aquatic creatures within a radius of 100 kilometers trembled. Come! He shouted softly, and all the aquatic creatures within 100 kilometers immediately flew towards him. There were about 500,000 to 600,000 aquatic creatures within 100 kilometers. Among them, there was even a god-level aquatic creature. This was the sea monster that people in the Tianzi continent were talking about. It was similar to some of the fish on Earth, but it was even more powerful and terrifying. Dragon head! Wang Xian had a thought. His head immediately turned into a huge dragon head and devoured all the sea monsters. The next upgrade will be much easier. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. He had already ignited 8 wisps of divine fire. He could directly control the sea monsters below the 8 wisps of divine fire. As long as he devoured more than 100 sea monsters at the level of the Eternal Lord, he would be able to upgrade once again. Go deep into the sea and swim like a dragon, Wang Xian mumbled. With a move of his body, he flew deeper into the sea. His speed was very fast. After 5 to 6 hours of flying, he entered the vast deep sea. The surrounding water was extremely deep. The bottom of the sea was bottomless. I can't go any deeper in this area. After all, There are immortal king-level sea monsters here. Wang Xian sensed his surroundings. Some immortal-level sea monsters were roaming around. He didn't dare to swim any further. In fact, it wasn't very safe here either. This was because the location below was the underground sea. No one could guarantee that there wouldn't be any terrifying sea monsters flying over. However, Wang Xian had the strength of someone who had comprehended 4 laws. Hence, he wasn't too afraid of them. Let's start the hunt, Wang Xian thought to himself as he scanned his surroundings with his extremely sharp eyes. Wang Xian moved his body, and the aquatic creatures that were less than 6 wisps of divine fire within a radius of 100 kilometers trembled and flew towards him. Roar! Roar! However, his suppressive force also caused some of the sea monsters to be furious. The rule of the divine dragon was a provocation to them. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.